Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. Most Dangerous Valkyrie of the Marvel Universe. Chapter 61. Last time at the end of the Sea King battle, Zhonglu came out and kicked Namor, sending Namor flying. At that time, he saw that Peter was injured, so he came down to take a look, and casually gave Namor a look, but the scene was broadcast by the TV station. During the flood, no one is in the mood to watch TV, but people outside New York City are paying attention to the superhero battle. And after the flood receded, those affected also wanted to know who caused their family to suffer such an unreasonable disaster, and whether they got retribution in the end, so they would look back and watch the replay. Thor Peter was bathed in blood and was seriously injured, which is of course touching. It is also surprising that the mysterious Iron Man is Tony Stark. There are countless fans. And on the internet, some martial arts disciples posted a photo of Namor's head stuck in the entrance of the main hall. Although this move caused a lot of criticism, the families of the local victims felt very happy. There were even many family members who came to the martial arts hall in person to express their gratitude to Zhonglu. Ultimate Wuliang Gym was originally just a small martial arts gym in Chinatown, but after this incident, it became famous and more people came to learn from it, but most of them were stuck by the Chinese level. But the total number of people is too large, and there are always many people who can pass the first level and enter the martial arts gym smoothly. The first group of people who were apprentices had already fallen to the second level of the 3-month entry. After all, although this group of people started their apprenticeship early, the quality of their students is relatively ordinary, and most of them are residents near the martial arts hall. Zhonglu directly eliminated this group of people who did not pass the test, and made room for the new disciples without showing any affection. Those disciples who thought that they could also successfully reach the standard when they saw Tony and Peter getting started successfully were dumbfounded now. Ultimate Wuliang Qigong is a supernatural skill, and it is really not something that ordinary people can practice. Without Zhonglu's magnetic field acceleration and system additions, normally speaking, ordinary people wouldn't want to touch the threshold of electric current at all, within 10 or 8 years. But even with the acceleration effect, it is still difficult to get started within 3 months if you don't study hard, concentrate your energy, or focus enough. Originally, it was possible for Jimmy Yang to succeed. After he awakened as a mutant, his physical fitness, aptitude, and bones all improved significantly. But success is also a mutant, and failure is also a mutant. After Jimmy became a mutant, he spent too much time developing his ability to control wind, and instead neglected his martial arts training. In the end, he failed the assessment, and Professor took him away. Although Jimmy was reluctant, crying bitterly and wanting another chance, but once the chance is missed, it will be gone, and ordinary people can never afford regret medicine. Although these expelled disciples did not practice electric current propulsion, their physical potential was still greatly developed during the past few months of practicing Qigong. Hearing and eyesight, strong body, and flexible muscles and bones are all basic, and there are even some prototypes of superpowers. The eyes of an eagle, the ears of a wolf, the speed of a leopard, the strength of a bear, these are some signs before the electric current pushes. Although this group of disciples were expelled from the martial arts gym, the Qigong they learned was real, and there was no falsehood at all. If they continued to practice, they could still reach the state of electric current promotion. It's just that without Zhonglu's magnetic field acceleration, when they can reach this level, I'm afraid they will have to wait a few years. By then, the era of superheroes has reached its climax, and there are superheroes everywhere, and they are not very good in it. Regarding this point, Zhonglu has nothing to do with it. The master leads the door, and the practice is in the individual. He gave everyone a chance, but no one took it seriously. The 3 months was carefully calculated by Zhonglu. As long as a person is not too talented, works hard, studies hard, and under the acceleration of his magnetic field and the addition of the system, he will definitely be able to get promoted within 3 months. Less than a month for Tony, and more than a month for Peter, are just special cases, not routine cases. From a certain point of view, it was too easy for them to get started, which created an illusion of, I can do it myself, to other disciples. Especially Tony, as a big brother, he didn't fulfill the responsibility of a big brother. Instead, he invited his juniors and sisters to parties every 3 days, which was a hindrance. Zhang knew that he had verbally warned him a few times, but no one cared, so he stopped talking. After all, a person who doesn't even have the ability to control himself can't become a Valkyrie. In addition to ordinary people who came to apprentice, mutants also came a lot. Not the mutants sent by Professor X for intensive training, but the mutants who came from all over the world. Zhang has a third eye. This image, no matter how you look at it, is a mutant. Although TV and newspapers have repeatedly emphasized that this is an alien and not a mutant under the hint of the government, there are still many mutants who regard him as the same kind and worship him as a hero. The most obvious result is that one after another, mutants come to the martial arts hall to learn from their masters. Zhang will not reject anyone who comes, and there will be no discrimination, regardless of whether he is a mutant or not. As long as he comes and is willing to be a teacher, he will be treated equally. The old rule is, first ask if you can speak Chinese, if you can't, get out, and if you can, you will be a registered disciple for 3 months first. Not to mention, the number of mutants is really quite a lot. Among them, there are a few ethnic Chinese who can understand Chinese. In just over a month, there were 3 more mutant disciples in Zhang martial arts gym. And those mutants who failed to apprentice were taken away by Professor X, who had been watching here. This is a complete surprise. Professor X used to use his ability to search the world to find the existence of mutants, but this ability consumes too much and cannot be used all the time. And with a place as big as the Earth, it is inevitable that there will be omissions. Now I just focus on this one place in the martial arts hall, and in the end I got dozens of mutants to go back. Although these people may not be able to stay in the end, at least they will leave a contact information. When they need it in the future, they will naturally ask the X-Men for help. After coming and going, this feeling will be there, and sooner or later, I will probably join the X-Men. Of course, Magneto knew about this situation. After all, he and Professor X fell in love with each other, and they both paid close attention to each other's situation. Of course, Lao Wan is also envious of these mutants, but Professor X can do things like let students come to the martial arts hall to learn from teachers, but Lao Wan is a standard mutant supremacist racist. How could this kind of thing be allowed to exist? In Lao Wan's eyes, mutants are the most perfect race in the world, and they are the direction of human evolution in the future. They are far superior to ordinary people, and ordinary people cannot catch up no matter how flattering they are. But Zhang suddenly appeared, allowing ordinary people to develop superpowers through cultivation, and he could even manipulate magnetic fields. This was a naked provocation to him, the Magneto King. Therefore, Lao Wan decided to find time to go to New York to let this junior know how to play with the magnetic field. Of course, not all voices in society are positive. In this magical place, America, you can always find opposition. The act of Zhang killing Namo and hanging his head at the entrance of the temple has aroused dissatisfaction among many people in society, especially those who abolished death. In the United States, the power of abolitionists is very large. Under their promotion, 1/3 of the states in the United States have abolished the death penalty. There are many people here who are above the middle class and belong to the social elite, and there are even some rich people. Some of them support the abolition of death, some out of respect for life, some out of human rights considerations, some out of social prestige, some out of money, some out of votes. There are various reasons. In addition to those who abolished death, there are also many people in the legal profession who also oppose Zhang behavior. They believed that Zhang killed Namo privately without trial, which seriously violated the spirit of the law. They believed that since Zhang could kill Namor, he would definitely be able to capture Namor alive, and then bring Namor back to the Federation for trial. After passing the federal interrogation, disposing of Namor will not only demonstrate the dignity of the law, but also serve as a warning to those super criminals. This kind of behavior of Zhang is not fundamentally different from those super criminals. It is still an illegal killing, and he should be sent to court for interrogation. But the same group of people in the legal field also claimed that they were willing to provide free defense for Zhang and a group of people self-servingly quoted various legal provisions on the internet to prove that Zhang would win the case and be safe in court. Go down. The implication is very obvious. I want Zhang to cooperate with them, everyone will go through the legal process, and then Zhang will be acquitted by the court, so that there is no need to worry about opponents such as abolitionists who will make trouble for him, and their group of legal professionals has gained both fame and fortune. Hehe, I really want to blind their hearts. Normal people will definitely be happy to cooperate with them through the court, and maybe they can hype it up and down TV programs such as talk shows, packaging themselves as social stars and making profits from it. But the question is, if Zhang doesn't even pay attention to S.H.I.E.L.D., will he pay attention to them? In fact, it's quite strange. Normally, this kind of public opinion would have been controlled by S.H.I.E.L.D., but I don't know why, this time SHIELDs didn't take care of it, just sitting and watching these unfavorable Zhang remarks fermenting. Zhang didn't know what was behind it, and he didn't care. There has always been only one way for Valkyrie to solve problems, just hit the fool. He is now busy teaching a new batch of disciples. Peter helped him, but it was better. But now that Peter has started school, the new semester has a lot of courses, and he is now a campus star, so busy, he really has no time, and he can only come back to the martial arts hall at night. So Zhang had no choice but to teach in person again, and once again cursed that unreliable apprentice in his heart. Fortunately, the quality of the disciples this time is much better than the previous batch, especially many of them are elites sent by various forces. Moreover, the military and other organizations have also completed the intensive Chinese language training for the candidates, and sent a group of people to follow this group to apprentice. Zhang didn't bother to distinguish their intentions, anyway, they treated them equally. Let's talk about the second level after 3 months, and wait until the second level to see if they can reach the third level of magnetic field rotation. Only those who have achieved the rotation of the magnetic field can be regarded as official disciples recognized by Zhang, seedlings that need to be carefully cared for, and the seeds of the Valkyrie. Registered disciples, beginner disciples, and official disciples, what are these 3 targets? Zhang explained clearly to them when they first started. As for how many people can achieve it, it depends on themselves. Zhang taught his disciples during the day and gave Peter extra meals at night. He was quite comfortable at first, but some people couldn't see him being comfortable. One day, he was answering questions from his disciples again, when someone knocked on the door suddenly. A disciple who was near the door went to open the door, and brought back a summons. Someone sued him. What was the specific content of the prosecution? Zhang didn't bother to read it, so he shook his hand and burned the summons. Ah, master, this is a court summons, and it is for you to appear in court for trial. Go to the court. I'm so used to his stinking problems, I still want to try Lao Su. Don't worry about it. Zhang continued to teach as if nothing happened. As for the disciples in the field, their thoughts floated. After all, for ordinary people like them, the deterrent power of the court is quite strong. Even if there are many elites from various organizations, they cannot confront the court face to face, and can only bypass the court through various legal channels or secret privileges. After the lecture that day, some people communicated with their superiors on the phone and reported the situation to them, wanting to know their own attitude towards this matter, whether to help or just sit and watch. In the end, everyone received a reply that they should ignore it. Another week or so later, suddenly, one day a police car came to the martial arts hall, and 2 policemen got off, holding a court-issued arrest warrant in their hands, claiming to arrest Zhang. Of course those disciples didn't dare to resist the police's law enforcement, so they had to obediently get out of the way. 2 Chinese policemen swaggered into the martial arts hall. They first took out the police badge and court documents, showed them to Zhang, and then said in Chinese, "Mr. Zhan, we are police officers from the New York Police Department, and we are arresting you according to the court order. You have the right to remain silent, but every word you say." Before they finished speaking, Zhang stopped shouting, "Get lost." With a wave of his hand, Zhang sent the 2 of them flying. After the 2 went out, they immediately called for backup, and several police cars rushed out from the corner of the street, surrounded the martial arts hall, and then a group of people rushed in again with guns in both hands. "Don't move, put down your weapon and get down on the ground, or we will shoot." A group of people clamored, and Zhang snorted coldly, "Ha, I'm giving you a face, right? How dare you be so presumptuous?" He didn't wait for the policeman to shoot, he just flicked his finger, and a ray of lightning flew out, and the heads of all the policemen exploded almost at the same time, blood spattering all over the ground. All the disciples in the entire courtyard were silent, not even a single one was panting. Zhonglu waved his hand again, and all the corpses, bloodstains, and blood-stained soil were bound by gravity, rolled into a ball, and then compressed, and compressed again, compressing the corpses of more than a dozen people into a sphere with a diameter of only about 1 meter. After that, he flicked it casually, and the sphere was like a cannonball, flying straight into the sky, accelerating, and accelerating again, and soon surpassed the first cosmic speed, and went straight to outer space. The disturbing flies are gone, let's continue with the class. Zhang Luxing acted as if nothing had happened, while the disciples looked ashen, fighting with each other. Only the group of mutants, instead of being afraid, looked at Zhonglu with even more fanaticism. The waves came overwhelmingly, like a mountain, smashing directly between the buildings. The Manhattan area is full of water, and there are seawater everywhere. A large number of people climbed on the buildings, stretched out their hands to call for help, and even more floated and sunk in the water, relying on all the floating objects around them to survive. In the distant sky, thunder and lightning flashed, which was the electric light driven by the electric current. This rolling tsunami was caused by energy leaked from the aftermath of the battle. It's still a familiar environment, even more clearly seen. Tony stood in his dream, and looked around carefully. He hadn't had this dream for a long time since he entered the realm of electric current propulsion. Today, when he relived the old dream, he no longer had the same sense of fear as before, and even had a little nostalgia. The vision of the realm is different, and what he can see is naturally different. Although he is only standing on the roof of the building now, he can clearly see the scene of the battle in the distance. The person who used electric current to push the realm was a strange woman of Chinese descent. The realm was rising step by step, and soon reached 500,000 volts. The next step was the rotation of the magnetic field. And the man in front of her, isn't it her master from another world? But master feels a little strange now. Oh, there is one missing eye on his forehead. This is the scene before going back in time, so who is this woman? Why haven't I seen it? Is it possible that a senior sister will appear on top of my senior brother? He watched for a long time, but he didn't see the woman evolve to the state of magnetic field rotation, and then saw the master kill him, and he understood that this woman did not break through the magnetic field rotation, so she was abandoned by the master. Then he saw a woman flying from the sky. She had a great figure, but her face was a bit square, and she was too violent. He smiled and watched his master being beaten violently by that woman, and secretly called the woman who might be Captain Marvel in his heart. Then, he saw Zhang Lu upgrade all the way from the 9th level of the magnetic field to the 15th level, and then he was strangled by the woman and flew into space. He couldn't see the battle clearly after that, until Zhang Lu flew back to New York again, flying wildly close to the water, and saw Captain Marvel being forced to stop to save people. With the two of them flying away one after the other, I don't know where they went. He enjoyed watching the movie here, but he couldn't participate in it, it was boring. Just as he was thinking about how to get out of this dream, he suddenly felt the ground shake violently. As soon as Tony lowered his head, he saw that the ground suddenly cracked, the tall building under his feet fell to one side, and his body also fell down. He subconsciously wanted to jump to another upstairs, but found that he couldn't control his body in the dream. Then he can only grasp something in midair in vain and hang there. But soon, under the abyss-like ground below, a large amount of fiery red liquid surged up like a fountain, spraying straight up, instantly evaporating the falling seawater, turning it into high-temperature steam, and directly rushed up. He just felt that the whole body was scalded by the steam, and it was cooked. Ah! He screamed again and woke up from his dream. The pain this time was many times stronger than the shock of seeing Zhang Lu's eyes before. He was panting violently, but fortunately, his physical fitness was very good now, and his heartbeat calmed down within a few breaths. What's the matter, my dear? Several female companions around him were woken up by him, and they all came to care about him. Oh, I dreamed of fighting that sea monster again, it was really a thrilling life and death battle. Tony babbled, starting another war with his hands up and down. On the second day, he came to the martial arts gym again. He wanted to figure out how the ground cracked and magma burst out in the end. He had always thought that the purpose of the Supreme Mage going back in time was to restore the flooded New York to normal, so that the people who died in the tsunami could be resurrected. But now he realizes that what happened at that time may be more serious than this, because some time ago, Neptune attacked and killed hundreds of thousands of people, and he didn't see the Supreme Mage come to turn back the time. Moreover, the scene where the ground cracked like an abyss and the underground magma looked like a fountain was really terrifying, and it made him have some ominous premonitions. After arriving at the martial arts hall, Tony realized that the faces here were all unfamiliar. However, the apprentices in the martial arts hall usually have their own jobs and studies, and some people often don't come, so he doesn't care. He only took a closer look. The models and younger sisters who usually play together found that they didn't come today, so they stopped paying attention to other people. However, he also found that these new apprentices were a little too honest, and even seemed a little scared. You just heard that there are newcomers here, so come here to see if there are any beautiful junior sisters who can harm you. Zhonglu looked at Tony jokingly. Tony coughed twice, and said without embarrassment, as a senior brother, of course, you must pay attention to the growth and development of your junior sisters. But don't worry, master, I will never touch the underage, and then raise it. Oh no, it's for the two junior brother Peter. You pervert, you definitely won't come if you have nothing to do. What do you want to do this time? Zhonglu said angrily. Master, can I ask, what was the result of your last battle with Captain Marvel? Which one of you won? Both are hurt, no one wins, no one loses. However, when I fought against her, I successfully reached the strength of the 25 heavens of magnetic field rotation, and the complete realm was greatly improved, but she did not make any progress. So, if there is a battle, I will definitely win. Then why did the Supreme Sorcerer go back in time? Are you dying? Oh, it's mainly because the Earth exploded. Zhonglu said casually. Earth exploded. This result greatly exceeded Tony's expectations. Although has realized how exaggerated the rotation of the magnetic field is, he was still shocked by this result. My Chinese is not very good. Is this explosion an adjective? Or is this what I understand as explosion? That's right, it's the explosion you thought, the explosion of the explosion, the Earth exploded, it's as simple as that. WTF. Tony couldn't help but swear, as the magnetic field rotating so violently. It can even crush planets. Oh, that's not true, the main reason is that the space gem was detonated at that time. Space gem, what is this? How come I found that since I became a teacher, I have encountered more and more strange words? Zhonglu shared information about infinity gems with Tony, and then threw the item out. Tony suddenly received such a large amount of information and had to digest it, so he left in a daze. After he left, Sharon found an opportunity to come out of the martial arts gym and dialed Nick's phone number. B also failed, and Tony didn't touch anything. Boss, I think your judgment is wrong. A capitalist like Tony doesn't care about the lives of ordinary people at all. I suggest starting with Peter. From what angle? I found that there are people from the Rising Tide organization in the martial arts gym. Just change the object of it to Peter. Quote. No, the Rising Tide organization is uncontrollable. They will spread the video everywhere. Once the target is angered, the consequences will be disastrous. Our purpose is to divide them and find someone who can check and balance the target. But your direction is right, I will find the right candidate. Instead of A, still use B. Peter is very busy now. Not only is he busy with classes, but he is also busy with giving speeches as a student representative, running for student union cadres, participating in club activities and so on. Originally, these activities were prepared for the famous people on campus, and they were treated only by campus stars, and had nothing to do with Peter, a nerd. But now Peter is the biggest star on campus, and fans are everywhere. The school even set up a Raytheon fan club, which is full of his fans. Therefore, for the first time, Peter enjoyed the feeling of being surrounded by stars, and also deeply participated in school activities for the first time. He has never participated in these occasions, so it is inevitable that he will be in a hurry and make some mistakes. If it is normal, this kind of newcomer is usually thrown aside, sitting on the bench or doing some chores. But Peter will definitely not encounter such a situation now. Everyone enthusiastically helps him revise his manuscript and practice his speech. As for the election and the like, it was just a formality, and it was short of an internal decision. Of course, with Peter's current popularity, there was no need for an internal decision. Hey, Peter, here's your love letter. It's for today, and it fills up the locker. Gwen walked in with a large box of letters, put the box in his arms, and smiled, looking at him non-smilingly. After Peter took it, he quickly put it on one side of the table, and explained helplessly, I told you, I won't read these things anymore. I don't know them, and I don't feel anything. There are a lot of beautiful women here. Gwen reached out to pick and choose from the letters, and then took out one, looked at the signature on it. This is the love letter from the cheerleader Claire. 90% of the boys in the school want to date her. As soon as he heard this name, a blonde with big breasts, buttocks and long legs immediately appeared in Peter's mind. He couldn't help swallowing, and then quickly waved his hands and said, I've never talked to her before. She likes Thor, not me. You are Thor. No, I'm Peter Parker. Peter didn't know how to explain his thoughts. He groaned for a long time before giving an example. As the master said, Thor and others are also a kind of appearance. I hope my girlfriend loves Peter Parker, while not Thor. Is there a difference? Of course there is a difference. When Thor is no longer Thor, people who love Thor will naturally leave, but those who love Peter Parker will not. Peter replied seriously. How did Thor disappear? I don't know. I always had a feeling that I wasn't supposed to be Thor. Peter hesitated and said, it was all too sudden. In less than half a year, I suddenly changed from a little transparent student to Thor. I always feel that all this is like a dream, which is extremely unreal. It's understandable, just like those Hollywood stars who became popular. Gwen raised her eyebrows, but I don't think you seem to be out of balance. Peter turned his head and thought for a moment. Maybe it's Mr. Stark's credit, although he always looks unreliable, but in fact I don't feel any sense of arrogance from him. I think I should also be like him, and treat myself as a member of ordinary people. Gwen rolled his eyes and said, Tony Stark is famously difficult to deal with. How did you have the illusion that he has a very good relationship with ordinary people? She shrugged, spread her hands, and said, well, he does have a very good relationship with the beauty. Peter scratched his head in embarrassment. People all over the world know that the big brother's flirtatiousness can't be washed away. Well, Gwen, are you free tonight? Peter finally plucked up the courage to attack Gwen. Go to the martial arts hall to practice, and try to complete the assessment within the 3-month deadline. What's wrong? Gwen turned around and asked strangely. Upon hearing that Gwen still needs to complete the assessment, Peter's courage quickly dissipated. Oh, it's nothing, just ask. Speak up if you have anything to say. Second, teacher, brother. Gwen smiled playfully at Peter. Holding the movie ticket in his pocket, Peter said hesitantly, I want to discuss with you about visiting the Osborne group in 2 days. Oh, is it the turn of the Osborne group this year? This is a routine visit every year, and the student union has a fixed plan. It's fine to take it out and change it when the time comes. I'll give it to you after school. Okay, thank you. Peter finally decided to wait for Gwen to pass the assessment. After all, his master was merciless in this regard. The previous group of registered disciples have now become students and have been kicked out of the martial arts hall. He could tell the difference between the serious and the serious, but he didn't want to drag Gwen down because of his own reasons. For things like dating, it's not too late to wait until Gwen successfully passes the assessment and becomes his junior sister. After school, Gwen gave Peter the activity plan, and the two went to the martial arts gym together. After exercising in the martial arts gym for 2 or 3 hours, Peter sent Gwen home and waved goodbye to her. After watching Gwen enter the room, Peter got up and hurried back. Gwen watched Peter's disappearing figure through the window, dazed. The boy who sent you back as Peter, the god of thunder. A voice sounded behind Gwen. Gwen turned her head and saw her father, George Stacy, standing behind the backlight, with an uncertain expression on his face. Yes, Dad, she smiled and said coquettishly, but soon, your daughter will also become Thor, female Thor. At that time, your colleagues will definitely envy you to death. George didn't speak, his face was heavy. Gwen realized that something was wrong with the atmosphere, and asked suspiciously, what's wrong? Dad. Gwen, maybe you shouldn't stay in the Ultimate Infinity Hall any longer. Why? Gwen asked in surprise. A few days ago, Zhonglu killed more than a dozen police officers in full view. Although this matter was suppressed by some powerful people, I cannot turn a blind eye to it. George clenched his fists tightly, gritted his teeth and said, I know that this world has never been fair. In the face of power and money, the law is often useless and justice cannot be done. I am powerless in many things, but at least I can't condone this kind of thing, let alone complicate it. Quote, Gwen, I can't ask others, but I hope you can quit that martial arts gym and not mix with that murderer. Gwen opened her mouth wide in surprise and covered her hands to keep from screaming. Dad, did something go wrong? He just saved New York. A merit is a merit, a demerit is a demerit, and they should not be confused. Just because he is a superhero, he can treat the law as nothing and kill people without punishment, especially if he kills law enforcement officers. Gwen fell silent, and after a while, he replied in a hoarse voice, Okay, Dad, I understand. Hey, Gwen. Peter finally finished arranging the activities he organized for the first time, and hurried to Gwen's side. You haven't come to the martial arts gym these days, what's wrong? Are you sick? No, I just have a lot of things at home. Gwen hesitated, not knowing how to explain to Peter, and it was not convenient to tell him the truth directly. Could it be that I plan to quit the martial arts gym because your master is a murderer? Then after today's visit, let's go to the martial arts gym together. I'll come and find you. After Peter finished speaking, before Gwen could answer, he went back to organize a team to receive the temporary visit cards for admission in order. Gwen opened her mouth, but in the end she didn't say anything, so she spread her hands and began to be an ostrich in discouragement, planning to hide for as long as she could. Anyone with a bit of emotional intelligence could tell Peter's attitude towards Gwen, so a group of hostile eyes cast on Gwen, and there were some faint curses like bitches. Gwen doesn't care about these things. As the eternal top female student in Midtown High School, she has long been used to these envious and jealous eyes, but this time the object of envy has changed from grades to that's just Peter. Rather than caring about the wailing of these defeated dogs, it is better to think about how to deal with Peter's invitation tonight. Is it possible to pull Peter out of the martial arts gym? Gwen was tempted for a moment, but then realized it couldn't be done. She can leave the martial arts gym freely, because she didn't get started at all. But Peter has officially started. According to the Oriental rules, the relationship between master and apprentice is very close, even like father and son. Thinking about something in her mind, her body subconsciously walked into the hall of the Osborne group with the flow of people. A guide is in front of the team, explaining to everyone. There are more than 32,000 species of spiders in the world, which are divided into 3 suborders under the order Araneae. These spiders have various abilities to help them find food. For example, this Australian spider has a powerful jumping ability to hunt prey. Above everyone's heads, a spider was slowly crawling on the web, but no one noticed its existence. This is a web-spinning spider of the family Felidae of the genus Gokukia. It can weave funnel-shaped spider webs that are almost as strong as construction steel cables. The narrator continued to introduce another spider. Peter is not that interested in these spiders, but he is an organizer, so he must follow up the whole process. On the surface, he looked like he was listening carefully, but from time to time he glanced at Gwen at the back of the team, only to find that Gwen had been out of his mind and didn't know what he was thinking. This spider hunts by reflex action, and its reflex nerve response is very fast. Many researchers even believe that they have the ability to predict and know danger in advance. This is a kind of spider sense. Peter finally couldn't hold back any longer, quietly withdrew from the crowd, and touched Gwen. He thought that his movements were small and didn't alarm others, but he is a big star now, and he didn't know how many pairs of eyes were watching him secretly. Even the spider on the head tremblingly pulled a thread from the web and slid down. Over the past 5 years, the Genetic Research Center of Columbia University has drawn the genetic map of spiders, and with these DNA blueprints, things that were impossible before are now possible. Synthetic RNA is used to create a new genome, which is similar to that of 3 spiders. The genes were mixed together to create 15 super spiders. The narrator continued to introduce, but many people's eyes followed Peter, and no one noticed that there were only 14 super spiders left in the glass cabinet. And the 15th super spider that escaped, spotted its target, fell from the sky, and landed directly on Peter's shoulder. Amidst the exclamation of the crowd, it aimed at his neck and took a bite. Peter, be careful. Many female students who cared about Peter were shocked when they saw a spider falling from the sky, and they all spoke out to remind them. But in the eyes of everyone, there was only a ray of lightning flashing, and then the spider was turned into coke by the electricity. This super spider, which Peter's father, Richard Parker, had put high hopes on, worked hard, and even integrated Peter's genes into it, just disappeared. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, almost forgot, Peter is now Thor, a mere spider, and he will definitely not be able to hurt him. Thank you for your concern, it's just a spider. But why are there spiders here? After everyone listened, they subconsciously looked at the spider cabinet at the side, and then someone discovered the problem. There are only 14 super spiders here, the spider just now. The students all looked at the dead spider on the ground in horror. The nearby security personnel rushed over and carefully checked the spiders in the glass cabinet, only to find that one was missing. Ah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to kill that spider. Peter hurriedly explained. The supervisor at the scene interrupted him and apologized to him solemnly. We should say sorry, if this spider did not land on your shoulder, Peter, but someone else, then due to its toxicity, there may be casualties. It should be us thanking you for killing the spider and avoiding it. A greater danger has arisen. Thank you, Peter. Thor once again saves a group of people from the threat of a poisonous spider, without his knowledge. Everyone in the hall gave warm applause and looked at Peter in the crowd with reverence. Although he has been through this situation many times, Peter still feels uncomfortable. Thank you everyone, I just did this kind of thing unintentionally, everything is God's will. Then, another group of people made the sign of the cross, thanking God. The following visits went very smoothly without any accidents. After all the procedures were completed and all the planned visits were completed, Peter handed over the after-school homework left by the teacher in advance, and then let everyone disband. As soon as he came to Gwen, he wanted to go back to the martial arts gym with Gwen, when he saw Harry Osborn suddenly appear and stopped him. Hey, Peter, my father wants to see you. The good brother's father asked, but he couldn't refuse, so he looked at Gwen apologetically. Sorry, Gwen, I'm afraid you have to go back first. Gwen was worried that she had no excuse to refuse, so she took the opportunity to get away. After the two parted, Peter and Harry went to the top floor, the office of the chairman of the Osborn Group, and met Harry's father, Norman Osborn. Haha, Peter, you are welcome. Norman stood up to welcome him very enthusiastically. Uncle Osborn, nice to meet you, you should have come to visit a long time ago. Peter is also very polite. At least the relationship between him and Harry has always been very good, and it is polite to meet your friend's father, it is indispensable. I just heard that you killed a super spider that threatened everyone's safety down below, and saved everyone again. This time it was really an accident. I didn't know it was a super spider beforehand. This is a mistake by the staff. According to normal circumstances, those super spiders should be locked in a glass cabinet, and it is impossible to escape. I have sent someone to investigate. I hope it is just an accident. Uncle Osborn means, could this be a man-made accident? I don't know, but I can't rule out this possibility, so it's better to investigate for safety's sake. If it turns out that this was just an accident, then of course it would be better. After a few polite words between the two, Osborn sighed. Actually, your father, Richard Parker, was also an employee of our Osborn Group. This super spider project was completed under his leadership. Later he had an accident, which made many projects of our group unsustainable, and we all feel very sorry for what happened to him. Peter only knew that his father was a biologist, but he didn't know the specific situation. After all, he was too young when his father died. And Osborn would not tell Peter that his father was actually a fool, a liar, a villain, and a scumbag. After taking the group's funds and researching the results, he actually absconded with scientific research materials. If Richard really escaped, that's all. The big deal is that the Osborn Group will get it back through other means. Whether it is money or power, there is always a way to solve it through transactions. But Richard, that idiot, actually died during the escape process, and even disappeared with the scientific research materials. How does Peter know what Osborn is thinking now? When he heard Norman say that his father had also worked for the Osborn Group, he immediately became more fond of the Osborn Group. Peter, what are your plans for the future? Which university to go to? Columbia University, or New York University, or from other places, I can write a recommendation letter for you?" Norman asked enthusiastically. Harry on the side laughed and interjected, "Dad, Peter is Thor now, and no university in the world would reject him." "Ha ha, look at me, I forgot." Norman laughed, and then said, "What major does Peter plan to study? If it's biology, there are usually a lot of experiments to be done. The Osborne Group can provide you with a laboratory for free for your daily study and research." "Well, I haven't figured that out yet. Maybe I'll study physics, especially about electricity and magnetism." "Is it because of the ultimate infinite Qigong you are learning now?" "It's like this. I'm now the first heaven of magnetic field rotation. The upper limit of Qigong is 50 heavens. According to my master, there are actually higher realms above this limit. It's just because of Qigong. It is a matter of the law, it cannot be achieved." "May I ask, your Qigong, besides giving people superpowers and being strong, does it have any effect on diseases? For example, cancer, leukemia, viral infections, poisoning, genetic diseases, etc.?" Peter scratched his head, thought for a moment, frowned and said, "Master didn't mention these things. I guess, immunity must be strengthened, virus infection must also have resistance, and it should be effective against toxins, but I don't know much about cancer and leukemia. As for genetic diseases, I heard from Master that when the magnetic field rotates to 90 heavens, it is possible to change one's DNA." Norman's breathing became a little short-lived immediately. "Has Mr. Zahn reached the 90 heavens now?" "That's not true. My master is only at the 25th level now, and his skills are limited, and he can only reach the 50 level." Norman's hope was extinguished again. "However, my master has high hopes for eldest senior brother, and believes that he is someone who can break the upper limit of cultivation techniques." Norman froze for a moment, then woke up. "Mr. Stark, he is indeed a genius." His thoughts turned, he made a decisive decision, and immediately made a decision. "Peter, have you considered, starting from biology, to help Mr. Stark overcome the upper limit of the ultimate limitless Qigong?" "Huh," Peter was taken aback, "Me? That's right, although I don't know much about Qigong, since it can have such a great impact on the human body, there must be a biological part." Norman looked at Peter seriously with bright eyes. "Mr. Stark is indeed a genius, but to conquer a project, it often requires the concerted efforts of scientific researchers from many industries, and it is not possible for a single person to solve the problem. If you have this intention, if so, then the Osborne Group will do their best to help you." "This is too sudden, I may have to think about it carefully." Peter was startled and hesitated. "Of course, this matter is very important, and you don't have to decide now," Norman said with a smile. "In addition, Harry's Chinese is also learning well. In a few days, he may also join the Ultimate Infinity Hall." "Really? That's great." Peter happily looked at Harry next to him, and the two smiled at each other. After talking about the business, Norman was busy with business, so he didn't accompany Peter anymore, and asked Harry to take Peter around some test areas in the group. The scope of the visit this time is much wider than what was shown to the students before. Many internal confidential laboratories also took Peter on a tour, allowing him to see the scientific research strength of the Osborne Group. When it was getting late, they ended their visit and came out of the laboratory. Harry had dinner with Peter, and then had Peter driven back to the martial arts gym. During martial arts practice at night, Peter told Norman Osborne what he wanted to ask his master for advice. Of course, Zhonglu would not refuse such a good thing delivered to his door. "You've seen how unreliable Tony is. You may have to wait decades to expect him to break through the limit of the 50 heavens. Stimulate that guy, you know how good-looking he is." Peter secretly smiled, nodded and said, "Okay, Master, I understand. I will reply to Mr. Osborne later." Peter finally realized that something was wrong. If Gwen just didn't come to the martial arts gym for a day or two, it might be that there were many things in her family, but for half a month, Gwen couldn't find an excuse to come, so there was a problem. After class that day, he blocked Gwen, who had been running away, in the corridor. "Hey, Gwen, you haven't been to the martial arts gym for a few days. Don't use the family business as an excuse. You were very attentive before, and you will definitely come even if you squeeze out time." Gwen was speechless. After a moment of silence, she looked at Peter, who was looking at her worriedly, and said, Peter, I've thought about it carefully. I'm actually not suitable for learning martial arts. It's too hard. Hard work. Are you telling a joke? Peter asked in surprise. This is Qigong, not external work, and it doesn't require physical exertion, or even the Miao stance. All you need is concentration and willpower. Promote Qigong to squeeze self-friction. Well, I admit, it's a little hard work, but under the acceleration of Master's magnetic field, this is already acceptable to ordinary people. I don't think this is much more difficult than studying math problems with great concentration. Gwen fell silent again. Gwen, is there anything you can't say? I think you must have some reason, but if you don't tell me, how would I know? Gwen looked around at the nearby classmates who were staring at the two of them. After hesitating for a while, he pulled Peter up the stairs to the rooftop. Okay, there is no one else here. If you have any questions, you can tell me. Trust me, I will help you solve it, in the name of Thor. Gwen considered her words, and then made up her mind to tell the truth to Peter, who was kept in the dark. After Zhang Lu answered the disciples' questions, he was sitting cross-legged in the main hall to practice the ultimate boundless Qigong. Although this kind of practice has little effect on promoting the realm of magnetic field rotation, it has an impact on the realm of completeness. The complete realm refers to a strong man's ultimate perception of battle. The understanding of the nature of the rotating force of the magnetic field, the practice of martial arts moves, fighting spirit, various external moves, obscene gestures, foul language, etc. Grasp of the enemy's mentality and weaknesses, promote with emotion, strengthen with vitality, comprehension of time and space, cause and effect, fate, etc. are considered complete realms. Zhang Lu's complete state was originally relatively low, but after the battle with Carol, he spent a lot of time absorbing the experience of that day's battle. I also saw the explosion of the earth, the rewinding of time, and the birth of the space I threw the space gem. The depth of my perception is far from what it was when I first came to the earth. When he fought Carol that day, he was always pressed and beaten by the opponent. In the end, he used the space gem to explode, relying on his ability to resist injuries, and dragged the outcome to a loss for both sides. But now if he fights Carol again, he has the confidence to beat Carol to death. He carefully perceives the fluctuation of the magnetic field of his own life, appreciates the gradual strengthening of the magnetic field to the body, and further understands the nature of the magnetic field rotation. Suddenly, he seemed to have realized something, retreated from the cultivation, and looked up at the gate. I saw a figure, swept in like the wind, stood in front of him, looking at him with complicated eyes. What's the matter, Peter? Master, I heard that you killed some policemen a few days ago. Tell me, Master, it's not true. Peter said in a trembling voice. Oh, there is such a thing. Because of this, many disciples have not come again these days. Zhang Lu replied casually. Why, Master? Because they tried to shoot me. Only those who have the consciousness of being killed are qualified to point guns at others. Is there a problem? But they're the police. So what? Did the police have one more than the others? The police are law enforcers, and killing them represents provoking the Federation. So what? Zhang Lu looked at him suspiciously. Then, Peter was about to say that he would be wanted and what would happen, but suddenly remembered that it had been so many days, and he hadn't seen anyone come to make trouble. He froze for a moment, stuck for a moment, and then said with a tongue-tied voice, You don't need to kill them at all, you can throw them out with just a wave of your hand. I lost it, and then more people came. In order to avoid more trouble, I killed them all. Zhang Lu said naturally. And in order to adapt to the rules of this world, I even threw their bodies into space, destroying them and destroying their traces. No one can use the bodies of these people as evidence. Peter was even more stunned, and after a long pause, he said, In fact, there is no need to kill people in this kind of thing. You can definitely find a good lawyer to deal with the lawsuit. Senior brother must have many good lawyers to choose from. Peter, I understand what you mean. Zhang Lu sighed, and explained to his good disciple impatiently, You think that I can solve the problem by peaceful means, and there is no need to use force, let alone kill people. Is that what you mean? Quote, Yes, that's right, Master, you don't have to react so aggressively at all. Peter nodded repeatedly. Why? Zhang Lu turned cold, and a chilling and oppressive atmosphere immediately enveloped the entire courtyard. Peter was better. After all, he was also a strong magnetic field, but the other ordinary registered disciples, their hearts were beating wildly, and they couldn't help feeling that the end was coming. Why should I do things according to their rules? Looking for a lawyer, looking for evidence, going to court. Don't you need time for this series of things? With that time, wouldn't it be good for me to practice a little longer? Why waste it on useless things? Peter looked into Master's eyes, cold and heartless. The eyes that Tony saw in his dream appeared on Zhonglu again. The life magnetic field in Peter's body turned around automatically, pulling his mind back. Master, how can this be said to be useless? Just spend a little time, and you can solve a lot of troubles. I also got rid of the hassle in less time. Peter couldn't understand his way of thinking at all, and said anxiously, Master, you killed someone, it's against the law. Peter, you remember, the greater the ability, the greater the power. Zhonglu earnestly taught his disciples, the so-called law is just a tool to protect the interests of the ruling class. As a Valkyrie, I'm a natural member of the ruling class. Those who follow me prosper, those who oppose me perish. As a well-behaved baby, a good student in the teacher's heart, and someone else's child in the parent's mouth, Peter Parker has never heard such words that subvert the three views. The long-term education has made Peter feel awe of institutions such as the federal government and the police, and he has an incomparable respect for the law, especially the principle of non-killing that is necessary for Marvel's authentic superheroes, which has penetrated into his three views. Even after he became Thor, he never broke the law, and he was still a law-abiding boy. Belongs to the kind of superhero that is the favorite of the Federation and black braised eggs. He had never killed anyone before, so during the last Sea King battle, he was shaken by blood because he killed a Murloc warrior. After getting a makeup lesson by Namor, he will definitely not be as cowardly when he sees blood now, but he still doesn't have the self-awareness of a strong person. This is not right, Master. Those policemen who died also had family members and friends, and they will suffer and grieve because of the loss of family members. If there is a better way to solve the problem, why use violence? None of my business. Zhonglu resolutely said, do I know them? What does their pain and sorrow have to do with me? Peter was at a loss for words for a moment, not knowing how to answer. Peter, you have been with too many ropes. You should tear them down and release yourself. Only by facing yourself can you step into the ultimate realm. So, the so-called martial gods are all murderous guys. Peter was anxious. It's not accurate enough. A Valkyrie should be someone who faces his heart and indulges his own desires wantonly. If he wants to be a good person, he can be a good Valkyrie, and if he wants to be a villain, he can be a bad Valkyrie. Like Tony, I think he will probably be a bad guy in the future. Martial god. But no matter what kind of Valkyrie it is, if you don't even know what your own nature is, and you don't even know what you want, you will not be able to go far on the road of magnetic field rotation. Can you hurt others if you wantonly indulge your own desires? Peter asked angrily. While the strong are moving forward, they will naturally squeeze the living space of others. The stronger the person, the more they will be squeezed. This is not to say that the strong will specifically target and hurt anyone. Zhonglu gave an example. Peter, when you entered the door, did you notice that an ant was trampled to death under your feet? We're talking about people with the same high intelligence. People who are no different from us. Peter roared loudly. Okay, let's use someone else as an example. Zhonglu shrugged and said indifferently. You were admitted to Midtown High School. Have you ever noticed people who were eliminated by 1 point less than you? You got a scholarship. Did you notice the losers you pushed off the list? Those who graduated from college to find a job and got several offers in a row, have you noticed those who interviewed together but got nothing? Peter said unhappily. What kind of example is this? I got it all through hard work, so it should be my reward. Is there a difference? It's just the degree of damage. It's just that you are too small, and the damage to others is also small. I am very big, so others are directly squeezed to death, that's all. Zhonglu spread his hands. I don't have any hostility towards those dead policemen, I just use the simplest solution. This is not a personal grudge. It's sophistry, it's irrational, there is obviously a better way. Peter was even more angry. A better way. Zhonglu sneered, the concept of good is always relative. The better way you said is better for others, but not for me. Peter, remember, this world is always a zero-sum game. The essence of the so-called win-win situation is that the two parties have found a third party that can be exploited together. Peter, whether you want to admit it or not, when you become Thor, you are already a big guy. You will unconsciously squeeze more and more people to death in the future, even if you don't want to. Peter, admit it. When you embark on the road of Valkyrie, you will eventually be insulated from the word, ordinary person, and gradually drift away. Peter's face was pale, and his mind was getting more and more confused. He shook his head, completely unable to accept these statements. He looked at Zhanlu sadly, and begged, "Master, why does the martial god have to put himself on top? Isn't it good to be an ordinary person like me and senior brother?" "Tch, ordinary person. I'm afraid only a child from an ordinary family like you would stick to these useless morals and be willing to be an ordinary person." Zhanlu looked at Peter with a sneer, and lifted the last fig leaf. "You really think Tony doesn't know anything about this? He just didn't say a word." Peter's face turned pale in an instant. Since he already knew about this matter, it makes no sense that the elder brother who is more informed should not know. As his idol, Tony Stark is special in Peter's mind. For a long time, the tall image of Tony Stark in Peter's mind collapsed. In that instant, Peter felt his idol cave in. With trembling lips, he asked in a trembling voice, "So, the government has not sent anyone to make trouble? Is it because the elder brother found someone to help behind the scenes?" Zhanlu thought for a while, then shook his head and said, "Probably not. Based on what I know about Tony, if he did something, everyone would know about it. Since he didn't jump out and come to me to sell it praise, presumably he didn't do it. Who else could it be?" Peter's face was ugly, obviously not convinced. "It's probably done by S.H.I.E.L.D. or the military, right? They want to take this opportunity to sell my favors or something." Zhanlu curled his lips. "Maybe they are the masterminds behind the scenes. It's them anyway." Peter's already shaky outlook was dealt another blow. "How is it possible? They are government employees. How can? The prosperity of the world is for profit, and the hustle and bustle of the world is for profit. In this world, the core of everything is profit. For the sake of profit, what's the point of getting a dozen policemen to die?" Watching Peter leave the martial arts hall in a daze, Zhanlu knew that the relationship between their master and apprentice would never return to the way it was before. But this life lesson must be taught to Peter, otherwise he will be taken advantage of by many people in his life, and he may not end well in the end. The only concern is how much Peter can learn from this lesson. Especially when someone with a heart is lurking in the dark. Zhanlu wronged Tony. He recently had a hot fight with some Hollywood actresses, and he never went home at all, and he didn't know that something happened in the martial arts hall. "The only time I went to the martial arts gym, I was still awakened by a nightmare, so I went to ask my master for help. At that time, things had been settled by S.H.I.E.L.D., and ordinary disciples who were afraid of causing trouble also quit the martial arts gym and never came back again. When he arrived at the martial arts hall, he saw nothing. But paper can't contain the fire. When he finally got tired of playing and returned home, he received the information collected by Jarvis. Killed a dozen policemen, in front of everyone, haven't received any punishment yet." After hearing this information, Tony was also a little speechless. "Yes, sir." Tony sat on the sofa, silent. "Sir, according to the model I have established, it can be judged that his three views are very different from ordinary people, and he does not have any awe and respect for the existing legal system and moral concepts. According to the model analysis, he and government agencies have another there is a greater than 87% chance of conflict and a greater than 64% chance of combat destroying New York City." Tony frowned, very hesitant. "Sir, you have seen the video before. The reason why the Neptune attacked New York was purely for revenge. New York City has already fallen into a crisis because of his reckless behavior. No one knows when the next crisis will come. The last time was to give me and Peter a remedial lesson, there will be no next time." Tony waved his hand irritably. "Then how can you be sure that he won't make another practical teaching next time? Tony is not the original superhero now, and he doesn't care too much about the death of a dozen insignificant policemen, but it has to be said that a flood in New York that killed more than 100,000 people still touched him very much. Maybe in the next crisis, Pepper and Obadiah will also be in danger. Jarvis added the last straw to the heavy camel. Okay, you won. I'll talk to my master, and I can't let him act so recklessly. After excluding most of the disciples who were not determined and quit automatically, the remaining disciples were basically the generation with clear goals, and they practiced more diligently than the first batch of disciples before. Of course, the most diligent practitioners are actually those elites sent by various organizations. They are also the ones who care the least about whether the police live or die. They even wished that everyone else would quit, and it would be best to leave them here alone. When Tony came to the martial arts gym, he saw a group of disciples who were more focused than before. They were not affected by the turmoil of the day, but they practiced more attentively. Oh, Master, the quality of these disciples is not good, they are all men. Zhonglu glanced at him. HMPH, compared to the former disciples who were less than half of supermodels or actresses, this is a bit like a real martial arts school. Those drunkards failed the March assessment, I got rid of them all. Tony shrugged. It's a pity, there are still a few junior sisters who didn't succeed in guiding them. If you want to find them, just call them directly. Tony raised his eyebrows. That's the problem, I didn't save their mobile phone numbers. It really is a scumbag. Zhonglu stabbed him, but his face perfectly defended him. Tell me, what's the matter this time? Are you having nightmares again? That's not true. Just the last time, the dream disappeared, just like a movie ended after watching it. After shaking his head, Tony continued. I heard that there was a lot of excitement here a few days ago, do you need my help? It has been resolved, although I don't know who did it. But basically, the mastermind behind the scenes should have retreated on its own initiative. Things that shoot yourself in the foot with stones often happen in this world. Zhonglu looked at Tony with strange eyes. Are you here this time to show your filial piety? No, of course not. Tony subconsciously shook his head in denial. After hesitating for a moment, he said, actually, I just want to ask, but you haven't thought about what would happen if the other party didn't retreat. Just do whatever you want. What else do you want? There will be more police coming, even the army. Zhonglu was amused by Tony's words. Haha, Tony, you don't think these things can hurt me, do you? You can even sweep the so-called Federation now. Are you planning to kill them all? Is there anything wrong? Zhonglu asked back. You will be rejected by the whole world, and everyone will condemn you. I am a warrior, and the opinions of the outside world are like floating clouds to me. As long as they don't shout in front of me, I don't have to pay attention to them. If they dare to jump out and shout, they will die with a flick of a finger. Tony gasped, and began to look at his master seriously, looking at his disapproving face, and realized that he was not joking, but sincerely thought so. Killing can't solve everything, and force can't rule everyone, otherwise Hitler would have succeeded. Zhonglu shook his head and began to teach his disciples. There is a saying in the East, killing one person is a crime, killing 10,000 is a hero, and killing 9 million is a hero among heroes. Back then there was a foreign race in the East who killed tens of millions of innocent people. The Easterners hated him to the bone, but it didn't affect him enjoying the glory and wealth and dying. And it didn't affect that after thousands of years, many victims his descendants worshipped him as an idol and even called him Genghis Khan. Hundreds of years later, a latecomer learned it and used the same method to seize the throne of the Central Plains, making his family a royal family for 200 years. Believe me, Tony, there was only one reason why Hitler failed, and that was that he wasn't strong enough, otherwise you should be chanting, "Long live the Führer," before eating every day. This kind of story is not unique to the East. Tell me something you are familiar with. The monster of Corsica lands at Port Juin, the man-eating devil advances towards Grasse, the usurper enters Grenoble, Bonaparte captures Lyons, Napoleon approaches Fontainebleau, Your Majesty will arrive today at his faithful Paris. How is it? With that said, doesn't it immediately feel like a full sense of substitution? There are only more than 7 billion people in the world. You only need to kill half of them, no, even only 1/10 of them, and the rest will naturally become very good. Looking at the master who said such words like a story, Tony felt cold all over his body. He swallowed and asked in a dry voice, what if they are still not good? Zanlu smiled slightly, his teeth were as white as snow, emitting a cold light in the air. Then kill them until they behave. If anyone had said such a thing, Tony would have thought he was a lunatic and ignored him at all. But when the person who utters it has blown up the earth once, he can't take it as nonsense. The master has something to do, and the disciple will do his best. If there is such a thing in the future, the master may as well give me a call, and it will be better for me to solve it. You level. Master, you are underestimating this disciple. I am also the chairman of the Stark Group after all, and I have a wide network of resources. All problems are ultimately nothing more than exchange of interests. Just disdain for it. Zanlu shook his head, and said to his ignorant disciple, Tony, you don't understand at all. Why do those people trouble me? Because my ability is too strong, but it is not within their control. For those who want to control power, I am an uncontrollable existence. What they need is an obedient lackey like Captain America, not an independent person who is outside their power. You exchange interests with them. What will you exchange for? Let me tell you, in the extraordinary domain, everything in the Stark Group is useless. Whether it is money or weapons, they are all replaceable, but super soldiers are irreplaceable. The only thing you can exchange is yourself. You are also strong in magnetic field rotation, and this is the only thing you can exchange. At that time, they can drive you to go here today and go there tomorrow, just like firefighters, running around, never stopping. Just like Captain America in World War II, use it to death, and go wherever it is dangerous. Quote. After Zanlu finished speaking, he looked at Tony and asked seriously, is this the life you want? Only then did Tony realize that he had taken it for granted, and he couldn't help but fell silent. It's not that he doesn't understand the greed of those vampires, it's just that he didn't think of it for a while. Now that he was reminded by Zanlu, he immediately understood, and he thought more deeply than Zanlu. Because of similar things, he has seen too many since childhood. It is the instinct of power animals to control everything in their hands, and if they can't get it, then destroy it. Zanlu continued, Tony, you are my apprentice, I don't want you to be like a fool, to become a tool in the hands of others for some insignificant things. You have time to waste energy on these trivial things, why not spend more time and think about how to improve your own realm, or improve the magnetic armor? This kind of compromise, there are countless times for the first time. Why do we need to back down first after the conflict between the two sides? The weak give way to the strong, which is a universally recognized law. Here on Earth, why is it the other way around? If you seek peace through war, peace will survive. If you seek peace through compromise, peace will perish. So, Tony, if you encounter this kind of thing again, don't think about compromises, concessions, exchange of benefits, etc., just chop off their paws. Let's see who dares to continue to bluff. You have to be generous in doing things, and you can do as much as you can. Once you gain power, you can be peaceful for decades. It annoys me, I'm going to take their lair. Even if the Earth is blown up, it's a big deal to go to other cosmic empires to survive. As long as they are strong enough, they can eat anywhere. Tony's face darkened, and he was speechless to this master who was afraid of chaos in the world. Master, your back doesn't hurt when you stand and talk. You have no relatives and friends, and you are alone, so you can be unscrupulous, but I can't. I have a family and a job, and I have a big family and a big business. I really can't do this. Zanlu frowned, reprimanded. It's worthless. If you don't go to the old one, you won't come to the new one. Is there any use for your current broken group? After you shock the world, there will naturally be a large number of forces willing to take refuge in you. Is there any group you want at that time? Tony was unhappy when he heard it, and retorted. Do I care about the group? This kind of group, as long as I want, I can build another one at any time. But what about the dead? Is it possible to find the Supreme Mage to resurrect? Zanlu was stunned, and said with a smile, what am I supposed to be? It's simple, you just ask Pepper to come over to learn from a teacher. You brothers and sisters, it's easy to get married. Tony ignored Wei Zanliu's weird smile, and defended himself. Who said I was referring to Pepper? I was talking about Obadiah. He is an old man, what kind of martial arts does he still practice? What you said is wrong. Look at the old man over there, He must be over 60 years old. He is a homeless person here. He wants to get an entry-level allowance. He must not be maintained by someone like Obadiah. Good. He can practice martial arts, why can't Obadiah? Zhang stretched out his hand and pointed out the door. Tony turned his head and saw an old man of Chinese origin in the courtyard, half-white hair, hunched waist, messy body, dressed like a standard homeless man, is working hard to practice. He's only been here for 3 months, how could he get started? That's hard to say. Under the acceleration effect of the magnetic field rotation, all weaknesses will be made up for. Whether it's old or weak, disabled, bones, or aptitude, it doesn't matter. There is only one thing that matters, and that is will. Zhang said with a meaningful smile. Since he came here, he has been sleeping near the gate every night. He has never stopped practicing exercises every day, and the wind and rain have not stopped. Of course, the most important thing is that he has never been to any of the miscellaneous parties you threw. It's hard to say whether it can achieve electromagnetic rotation, but it should be driven by electric current. He should be very promising. It is very likely that he is your third junior brother. What? This bad old man? Tony was shocked. He could accept a little fan like Peter as his junior, but it was really hard for him to accept an old homeless man. Obadiah's physical fitness can't be worse than him, right? Tony hesitated and said, Obadiah's physical fitness is not a problem, he has always paid attention to maintenance. However, Obadiah is busy with affairs, it is impossible for him to concentrate on learning martial arts like him. The opportunity has been given to him. Whether he can seize it or not is up to him. I have no objection, Zhang said indifferently. Then master, how about extending the assessment period? Tony salivated and interceded. It's not good. There are no windows. The rules are set and cannot be changed. Zhang flatly refused. If it's a character of the protagonist level like Captain America, or Zhang can be lenient, but a villain like Obadiah doesn't need to give face at all. Chapter 71. Obadiah is the director of the group, and Pepper is the secretary to the president of the group. Both of them are responsible for many affairs every day. Tony intends to let the two of them come to apprentice separately, each for 3 months, and it will not have any adverse effects on the group's business. Tony decided to talk to Obadiah first, and Pepper could go to the back row first. He came to the Stark group unsteadily, hooked up with Obadiah's secretary for a few words, and went directly into the director's office. Tony, how did you appear here? This is a rare thing. Obadiah was also very surprised by his appearance. Haha, don't say that, Uncle Obadiah, I'm the chairman of the group. Tony smiled and hugged him. Yeah, the chairman who disappears, the chairman who you don't see once a year, the chairman who many newcomers don't know. Obadiah kept complaining. Tony quickly interrupted his chanting, how could there be new people who don't know me? I appear on TV and newspapers every day. Yeah, but it's not the financial version, nor the technology version, but the entertainment version. Obadiah rang the bell to call in the secretary, and brought coffee to the two. Tell me, Tony, aren't you on vacation in Saudi Arabia with your sweetheart? Why did you come back suddenly? Oh, Uncle Obadiah, you are old news, we went to the Maldives 2 weeks ago. Who cares where you go to play? I just want to know, you came to my office to harass me, did you come up with some new invention? Oh, I've been busy practicing martial arts recently, and there are no new inventions except for the strong magnetic armor. Strong magnetic battle armor. Is it a new weapon? Exoskeleton armor. Obadiah's ears immediately caught the keyword and became interested. Oh, no, it's armor that assists in martial arts. It's useless for those who haven't reached the realm of magnetic field rotation. Obadiah immediately lost interest. Since it's useless, why are you here? Don't be so cold, Uncle Obadiah. Shit, Tony, I'm very busy with work every day, and I have a meeting in a while, you better stop talking nonsense. Okay, Uncle Obadiah, have you ever thought about learning martial arts? Be like me and become a super soldier, Tony said, easily twisting the steel armrest on the seat into a twisted shape. I don't need to be a fighter. Obadiah immediately refused. But it can make you healthier and more energetic. Uncle Obadiah, you are not young anymore, and your heart is not very good. Various senile diseases have appeared one after another, right? But after practicing martial arts, your body can regain health, and even the thinking speed will be far faster than ordinary people. Tony's words touched Obadiah. He thought carefully for a while, nodded and said, "Well, you are right, I need a healthier body. I will spare an hour or two every day to practice martial arts, you let that come over and teach." "No, no, Uncle Obadiah, my master has very strict rules. He must understand Chinese, and he is willing to teach it only when he is formally apprenticed to him. And there is a magnetic field around him to accelerate, which helps to increase the speed of cultivation." "Rules, Tony, I'm surprised to say these two words from your mouth. Should I give your teacher a Best Teacher award?" Obadiah said in surprise and sarcasm. Tony shrugged and didn't reply, because he couldn't explain to Obadiah what kind of person Zan Lu was. "Uncle Obadiah, my idea is that you take a 3-month vacation and concentrate on practicing martial arts. The work of the group is temporarily handed over to Pepper. After 3 months, Pepper will also go to the martial arts gym to practice martial arts. At that time, I have to entrust you to take care of her work." When Obadiah heard this, he immediately became vigilant. Tony didn't know that Obadiah was the main emissary who was attacked in Afghanistan before, and all related personnel were cleaned up by Obadiah. Later, because Tony became Superman, thermal weapons were ineffective, so Obadiah had to give up the idea of borrowing a knife to kill Tony and hide his thoughts. It had been so long, he thought that Tony would always be kept in the dark, but today Tony's words immediately raised his vigilance again. He seriously suspected that Tony had noticed some clues again, so he wanted to kick him out of the board. The so-called learning martial arts is just an excuse, the real purpose is to take the opportunity to seize power. The 3-month window period is enough for Tony to win over all his cronies, or clean them up. At that time, he can only be a short-term director in name only. Obadiah crossed his hands, leaned forward, stared into Tony's eyes, and asked, "Tony, have you heard any rumors?" "Rumor? What rumor?" Tony was puzzled. "Then why would you ever think of asking me to leave my job?" Obadiah asked aggressively. "My master has a rule that all registered disciples must achieve current promotion within 3 months, otherwise, they will be demoted to students and kicked out of the martial arts hall. Without the magnetic field acceleration around him, thinking it will be very difficult to practice electric current propulsion again. That's why I hope you can concentrate on learning martial arts for 3 months, and then you can get the official student quota first." Tony explained in detail. "No, I will never leave my job." Obadiah flatly rejected the suggestion. He suddenly stood up and shouted to Tony excitedly, "I have worked in this position all my life, and I have dedicated my life to the Stark Group. My life, my ideals, everything about me, have been deeply tied to the Stark Group. Without me, the Stark Group would not be able to develop to where it is now. As a result, now, you want to drive me out of the Stark Group because of some unconfirmed rumors. Stop dreaming, Tony. I will not leave here, even if I die, I will die in this position." Tony looked at Obadiah, who suddenly became agitated inexplicably, and couldn't figure out where he said something wrong, which caused him a misunderstanding. "Hey, Uncle Obadiah, don't get me wrong, I didn't mean to drive you away. Your contribution to the Stark Group is irreplaceable and indelible, and you will always be the pride of the Stark Group. I just want you to take a long vacation first to train your body well, and then you can live healthier and work more efficiently." "Ha, do you think my work efficiency is low?" Obadiah slapped his desk vigorously. "Let me tell you, Tony, my health is very good, and I can continue to work for another 20 years. I don't need to take a vacation. I don't need to practice martial arts either. Let that broken martial arts gym with too many rules die." Tony was kicked out of Obadiah's office in a desperate manner. Fortunately, the sound insulation in the office was very good, and no one knew about his scolding. After he left, Obadiah began to call his cronies one by one, and began to win over, promise, and warn them to prevent them from being divided by Tony. Then, after hesitating again and again, he finally dialed another number. "Justin, I agree to your conditions. The things will be sent to you in a while, remember your promise. Don't tell me how strong Tony is. If he is still an ordinary person, it's not your turn to trade with me." After hanging up the phone, he stared at the front with a sullen face, and muttered to himself, "The group should belong to me, and no one can take it away." Tony didn't know what Obadiah was doing. He only thought that his words touched the old man's sensitive nerves. He went to his own president's office again, and he decided to talk to Pepper first, so that after Pepper was successful in martial arts, he could set an example for Obadiah. Pushing open the door and entering the secretary's room, Pepper looked up to see him coming in, and was just as surprised as Obadiah. Wow, the sun really came out from the west today. Who did I see appearing in the company? It's actually my boss. Pepper looked surprised. Tony handed over a flower that he picked up from the corridor, and said with a smile, "Your beloved boss saw you working so hard, so he decided to give you a raise and give you a vacation." After Pepper reached out to take the flowers, he threw them into the trash can and said with a sneer, "Don't think I can't recognize it, these are the flowers in the corridor. Don't use the method of dealing with those little trick me, I don't accept this trick. Tell me, what work do you want to give me? Could it be you make which woman's belly bigger? Don't say that, Pepper, it makes me feel like a scumbag." Tony smiled and gave Pepper a hug. "What I said is true, I'm going to let you take a 3-month-long vacation." "What, take a long vacation? Or 3 months?" Pepper's face was full of surprise, wondering what Tony was doing. Tony told Pepper what he had said to Obadiah before. "Really, didn't you want to find an excuse to drive me away and change to a young and beautiful female secretary?" Pepper stared at Tony suspiciously. "Of course not, Pepper, you have done a good job all the time and saved me a lot of time. How can I be willing to replace you?" "Okay, I accept your compliment. Normally, you really wouldn't do that, but when you're an asshole, I'm not sure." Pepper's eyes were still full of doubts. Tony felt wrong. He held up his hands and complained helplessly, "Why don't you believe me when I tell the truth?" Who else did you say this to?" Pepper was even more disbelieving. "It's Obadiah." Tony sat on the sofa in frustration, and told what happened in Obadiah's office just now. "I really want you to have a healthier body, sincerely. The benefits of practicing ultimate Wuliang Qigong are what I have personally experienced, and there is no falsehood. But why do you always feel that I want to take you away? What about your job?" Pepper was embarrassed for a moment, then hesitantly said, "Maybe it's an occupational disease. In the workplace, there are always a lot of open and dark arrows. Not everyone is born to be the president of the group. We have been able to get to where we are today, and we have won the results after countless times of fighting openly and secretly. But at the same time, we are also facing the challenges of countless latecomers, and we may lose everything at any time." "I do, and so does Obadiah." Tony opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. This kind of experience of struggling from the bottom is too unfamiliar to him. He has no experience at all, and he can't empathize with it. "Well, I screwed up again. Now Obadiah is throwing a tantrum in the office, and he won't believe my explanation. Maybe in his mind, I'm the young lion who wants to usurp his lion power. Maybe he will call me ungrateful, kill a donkey or something." Tony slumped on the sofa, muttering helplessly. "Then prove to him with practical actions that you didn't mean that, you still trust him, just like your father trusted him, and it hasn't changed at all." Pepper sat next to him and held his hand. "So I came here, I want you to go to the martial arts hall to learn martial arts first, and hand over the business of the group to Obadiah. 3 months later, when you come back as a little Superman and show off in front of him, you will know how much I care about his health." Tony grabbed Pepper's hand and said seriously. After hearing this, Pepper's complexion changed. He withdrew his hand, got up and sat down behind the desk. "So, I'm just a model for display. Hey, Pepper, why are you losing your temper?" Tony immediately realized that he had said the wrong thing. "I originally planned to let you all go to learn martial arts, but I went to Uncle Obadiah first. The affairs of the group cannot be interrupted, so." Pepper interrupted Tony's words expressionlessly. "Okay, I understand. After I hand over the work, I will go to the martial arts hall to learn from my teacher. You can go to hold your party now. You reading www.uakanshu.com." Tony opened his mouth, not knowing how to explain it, and finally he had to say, "I'm afraid you have to learn Chinese first. According to the rules of my master, people who can't speak Chinese will not be accepted." "Okay, I see. Is there anything else I can tell you?" Pepper didn't even raise his head. "Well, not anymore. Goodbye." Tony got up angrily and said goodbye. He walked to the door, stopped again, turned back and said, I don't have a party tonight, do you have any plans for tonight? It didn't exist before, but now it does. Oh, well, then, bye. Tony went out in a low mood, looking at the bustling scene in front of the building, but felt extremely lonely. He changes women frequently, but he really has no experience in love. Tony's feelings for Pepper should be first, then love, and then gradually get used to the existence of the other party, and finally it will be a matter of course. And Pepper's feelings for Tony should be love first, then girls, followed by a cycle of disappointment, expectation, and disappointment. Everyone knew Tony's feelings for Pepper, Pepper naturally knew it, and Tony knew it too. But they all have concerns. Pepper has no confidence in the durability of Tony's affection. And Tony is seriously insecure, and he is also very cautious about relationships. He didn't know what kind of feelings Pepper had for him, and whether it was different from those models and actresses. When everyone flattered him, he naturally couldn't tell who was genuine and who was fake. Love is something that always makes people worry about gains and losses. People as smart as Tony Stark can't escape. Hey, Tony, why are you in a daze? Why don't you get in the car? Happy's voice called Tony back from his trance. Oh, it's nothing, I was thinking about where to go. Tony got into Happy's car. Go to the martial arts hall. Haven't you already learned it? Why do you keep running to the martial arts hall? Happy looked at Tony in the rearview mirror, and said slowly while driving, I heard that you left there in the past few days. Those female models were driven away by the martial arts hall. They haven't been able to get in for 3 months, and they haven't passed the assessment. Tony replied casually. But I heard that the martial arts school wants to make room for the newcomers. Is it all rumors? Tony shrugged. It can't be regarded as a rumor, it's true that many new people have arrived. Unfortunately, most of them are men. Many of those female models who were kicked out came to me privately and wanted to get your contact information, but I rejected them all. I think, since you didn't plead for them, it means that you already want to change a group of girls, so that's it. Basically. But even if I plead, it's useless. Tony couldn't help but want to sigh when he thought of his master's rigid rules. He doesn't even give you face. Happy said, pretending to be surprised. It's not just me, he doesn't give face to anyone. But he has the ability to not give face to anyone. Tony thought of his own force value, and then predicted his master's force value, and felt powerless all over. He couldn't help sighing. How can there be such a human being in this world? Happy glanced at Tony in the rearview mirror again. I heard that a few days ago, he killed more than a dozen policemen. He was still in full view. Oh my God, it's really terrifying. Seeing that Tony didn't respond, he tried again. Will the group be implicated by him? Once the public knows about it, the group's stock price will definitely plummet. The news has been controlled and will not be leaked. What about those students who have quit the martial arts school? Don't they also speak out? As long as it doesn't spread on a large scale, the voices of some minority people can't form a scale, and no one will care. But the relatives of the deceased will care. They may retaliate, plant a bomb or something. Tony couldn't help laughing out loud. Happy, after practicing electric current propulsion, naturally he is no longer an ordinary person, and he will no longer be injured by mere bullets. I'm worried, if the relatives of the deceased can't take revenge on the martial arts school, will they hate the house and take revenge on the Stark group? Such as Obadiah, Pepper and the like. Well, what you said makes sense, and this possibility cannot be ruled out. But I have arranged for Pepper to go to the martial arts hall to learn martial arts. After she gets started, Obadiah will also go there. By the way, Happy, your middle school, how's the literature going? Chinese is really an esoteric language. Happy said awkwardly. It's just a language, how difficult can it be? Hey, Tony, don't judge ordinary people by your standards. It takes at least a year for a normal person to learn a language. If I were a genius like you, I wouldn't be driving you here. By then I'll start a big company by myself and take you here as a driver. Happy shouted angrily. That's right, when your company is established, I'll drive for you. Mr. Happy, please get in the car. Mr. Happy, please get out of the car. When the two talked about their happiness, they burst out laughing. After laughing for a while, Happy restrained his smile. and said to Tony seriously, Tony, that Zhonglu is not a good person. I am very worried about you. That's true, Happy. Master Zhan is not only not a good person, but also a one who regards human life as nothing. But the problem is that his force value is too high, even beyond the limit of my imagination. I don't know at all. Who can restrain him? Tony sighed. Tony, you can do it. You must have a way to restrain him. Harpy slammed on the brakes, parked the car on the side of the road, turned his head, stared into Tony's eyes, and said seriously, Tony, you are a genius. A unique genius in this world. If there is one person in this world who can check and balance that dangerous man, that person must be you. Tony, you have to have confidence in yourself. There is no problem in this world that you can't solve. Tony stared blankly at Happy in the front row, and said in surprise, Happy, I am very grateful for your trust in me, but the question is, why should I check and balance him? What does it do to me to do such a dangerous thing? Benefit. Hey Tony, you're a superhero. You're Iron Man, Happy yelled angrily. Come on, those are titles hyped up by the media. I never thought I was a superhero, and I'm not interested in such titles. I don't want to be a running dog of those rich and powerful. I dedicate my youth, my life, and my children and grandchildren. Of course, I don't exclude others from doing so. I will even applaud and welcome him and give him all the glory. As for myself, if you have that time, wouldn't it be good to pick up a few more girls? I think my master is right. The greater the ability, the greater the power. Okay, Happy, don't look at me so disappointed, like a puppy with a bone missing. You know me, I'm a playboy, and becoming Iron Man was purely accidental. Happy turned around slowly in disappointment, started the car again, and sighed, well, you're right, I expected too much from you. Happy, I'm glad you can tell me this, at least it proves that you really regard me as a friend. Tony smiled and reached out to the front row, patting Happy on the shoulder. Happy continued to drive forward, and said at the same time, of course I regard you as a friend, and I also expect you to behave in accordance with your status and reputation. Not only me, but everyone who cares about you and loves you will have this expectation of. Including Miss Pepper, Mr. Obadiah, and the deceased Mr. Howard Stark. When Happy was talking, he kept his eyes on the rearview mirror, and it was obvious that when his father was mentioned, Tony frowned and looked a little dazed. Sure enough, as the man said, the deceased Howard Stark was Tony's weakness. Although Tony always said that he had nothing to do with Howard, in fact, his words and deeds were all left by that young man, influenced by his father. The goal has been achieved. Happy didn't disturb Tony's meditation, but looked away, stopped talking, and drove steadily. On the outskirts of New York, next to the highway. The trees on both sides of the road are green, and the sunlight pours down, leaving mottled tree shadows. The two teams were facing each other not far from under the tree. Both sides are headed by an old man. One is a bald man in a suit, sitting in a wheelchair, the other is a steel helmet with a hooked nose, suspended on a huge steel plate. Behind them, each followed their own fans, with different appearances and strange shapes. One could tell at a glance that they were all mutants. Charles, how did you find me? Magneto asked sullenly. Professor X smiled and replied, Eric, your helmet can prevent you from being probed by me, but in the same way, I can also find you based on this. In this world, there are people who have vigorous vitality and cannot be probed by me, many. You're avoiding the important ones, Charles. Unless you know in advance that I'm going to go this way, you can't conduct an accurate investigation at all. I know the limit of your ability. You can't always investigate, and you can't just probe someone as you like. Magneto is very suspicious of having an undercover agent on his staff, just as he has an undercover agent at the X Academy. Professor X firmly refuses to admit that Magneto's subordinates have his own undercover, just as Magneto firmly refuses to admit that he has his undercover in X Academy. Eric, I know you as well as you know me. Professor X smiled and replied. When the news spread that Ultimate Wuliang Qigong can create superpowers, I knew that you would definitely come to trouble Zhan Lu. And according to your habits, you will definitely walk in a straight line. So these days, 30 minutes, just scan once in this direction. Fortunately, today, I finally blocked you. You can't stop me, Charles. No one has ever been able to stop what I'm going to do. Magneto had a straight face and a very firm attitude. Professor X persuaded. Eric, humans have always hated and feared mutants. The fundamental reason is that too many people have been hurt by mutants. Especially when mutants have just awakened, their ability to control it's very weak, and it tends to cause harm to those around it. And the practice of ultimate infinite Qigong can allow mutants to better control their own abilities and not lose control. There have been clear examples before that Jimmy Yang's control over abilities has far surpassed that of ordinary mutants. Even many children who have studied at X Academy for a year or two may not be able to freely control the wind like him. Magneto snorted coldly, and said, "Your kind of kindergarten-like training method, of course the progress is slow. In the Brotherhood, as long as you kill a few times with real swords and guns, you can basically control your ability freely." Professor X frowned and said, "Because those mutants who couldn't control themselves died, they died in meaningless battles. Fighting is the ladder of progress, how can it be said that it is meaningless?" Magneto said disapprovingly, "Nature always pays attention to the survival of the fittest, and people who cannot freely control their own abilities are like disabled people, and they will naturally be eliminated. Excellent genes eliminate inferior genes, and strong abilities eliminate weak abilities. Just like Homo sapiens replaced Neanderthals, mutants will also eliminate humans. And the reason why humans reject mutants is not because of being hurt. Many people who have not been hurt by mutants will still reject mutants. Because they are jealous. They are jealous of the strength of mutants, but they only have a fragile body. Even if they exercise for 2 hours a day for 10 years, their strength and muscles are still far inferior to mutants. They are jealous that the mutants are different, and they are just a group of ordinary people who have no characteristics and can only be stepping stones for others. They have to pour chicken soup for their souls, saying that they admit that their parents are ordinary, admit that they are ordinary, admit that your child is ordinary. They are jealous that mutants can have all kinds of abilities once they wake up, and they have worked hard for 10 years, but they still can't become experts. They can only watch a few geniuses have unlimited glory, and no matter how hard they try, they can't figure it out a problem that others can solve at will. This is the key. Because of jealousy, they repel them, just like they would call the best students in the school nerds. They take pleasure in bullying those nerds. Could it be that these nerds have hurt them too?" Professor X sighed, frowned, looked at the excited Magneto, and sighed, "Eric, we have been arguing for more than 10 years, and no one can convince anyone. I don't want to continue arguing with you today. Even if what you said is correct, human beings are jealous of the power of mutants, so they reject mutants. But now everything has turned around. Anyone can practice ultimate Wuliang Qigong, which can mass-produce superpowers. Artificial superpowers can effectively alleviate human hostility and fear of mutants. When human rulers no longer worry about mutants harming them, they will naturally not incite ordinary people to reject mutants. Only then will the two sides be able to coexist peacefully. No, Charles, this will only weaken the mutant's awareness of the superiority of his own blood. This person must be eliminated." Magneto's murderous intent was revealed. "It's useless, Eric. Zhang Lu has taught many apprentices. Even if you kill him, you still can't stop humans from learning the ultimate infinite Qigong. No, it is still useful. There is a magnetic field acceleration effect around him. Without his magnetic field acceleration, it is very difficult to get started quickly and become a power user. As long as he is eliminated, the mass-produced power user will become a castle in the air, can't be done at all." "Your information is very detailed," Professor X said meaningfully. "Among the mutants studying in the martial arts school, are there any subordinates of yours? Or?" After scanning the crowd, he suddenly asked, "Where is Ruiwen? She has already gone to the martial arts hall to learn from a teacher, hasn't she?" Magneto snorted coldly, noncommittal. Professor X naturally understood. He shook his head and said, "Eric, I won't allow you to go there. You should go back." Magneto was furious, and he waved his fingers lightly. The huge steel plate that carried them over immediately disintegrated into countless small pieces, and the soldiers on the steel plate fell to the ground one after another, taking up their postures, ready to attack at any time. On Professor X's side, the X-Men are also focused and ready to go to war at any time. All kinds of energy particles gathered one after another, and the huge energy almost distorted the space between the two sides, and the battle was about to break out. In the end, the battle did not break out, and both sides were rational and restrained. Charles, you can't stop me, you can't protect him forever. I will do everything possible to stop you, I will always pay attention to your movements, you will never have a chance. After the two sides finished talking, they dispersed. On the way back, Qin Gele asked, Professor, why didn't you tell Magneto that ultimate Wuliang Qigong might activate the X gene? If he knew there was such a possibility, he would probably give up his plan to kill Zhang Lu. Gone. The thing is, it's just my guess. I don't have any evidence. Jimmy Young isn't enough. You have to have at least one more. Also, we were hostile at the time, and what I said, Eric might not have will believe it. He's a stubborn old guy. Professor X sighed, turned his head to look at Storm, and said, Ololo, your Chinese is pretty good. You can go to the martial arts hall to learn from your teacher in a while. Okay, I see. Storm nodded in agreement, and then asked, then should I find Rui Wen? Professor X hesitated for a moment, then shook his head and said, no need. Rui Wen's abilities are only suitable for being a spy, and she has no combat ability. It won't hurt to let her learn it. Besides, if it's as I guessed, I still need her to ask Eri carry the message. After entering the city, Storm took a taxi directly to Chinatown, while Professor X led a team to visit some old local friends, hoping to use the opportunity of man-made superpowers to create a better social environment for mutants. Zhang Lu was quite surprised by Storm's arrival, but he didn't care about it, anyone who wanted to be taught would do. They all went to learn Chinese, which is full of sincerity, and there is no reason to reject them. As for the political purpose hidden behind this, what calculations Professor X has, the attitude of the human government and the military, etc., Zhang Lu doesn't care at all. Whatever you like, just don't let things fall on me, otherwise I will let you know what is the way of Valkyrie to solve problems. Although he is not authentic enough as a magnetic field maniac, he would not just slaughter a few cities to try his tricks, but he really killed his temper, and he will definitely not have the slightest scruples about incidental losses of personnel. Many forces sent people to learn from teachers and try to win over the martial arts school, so the X-Men sent people. Although many forces were dissatisfied, they did not trigger a rebound from all forces. As for the undercurrent of Storm's apprenticeship, it is up to Professor X to quell it. After Aurora became a teacher, he first established a good relationship with a few mutants in the martial arts gym, and hoped that when they failed the examination, he could bring them back to X Academy. She pays attention to everyone in the martial arts gym, hoping to find Rui Wen, the Mystique girl. Even if she doesn't expose her, she must at least know it well. But I have to say that Rui Wen is really the top infiltrator. If she doesn't want to show her flaws, it's really not easy for others to find her. Orlo has dealt with everyone, but can't find any problems. The third introductory disciple of the martial arts school appeared, not the homeless man Zhang Lu had hoped for, but agent number 13 Sharon Carter. If there is anyone who welcomes this the most, there is no doubt that it is the big brother Tony Stark. Haha, it's okay, it's the third junior sister, not the third junior brother who is twice my age. Tony was overjoyed, and extended an invitation to Sharon, third junior sister. In order to celebrate your successful entry, I decided to hold a grand party tonight, let's have fun together. With a recognizable smirk on Sharon's face, she declined politely, thank you, senior brother, but I have invited my uncle's family to have dinner. I am very sorry. Let's talk about it next time. Oh, what a pity. Tony gave up angrily and came to Zhang Lu. Pepper's Chinese is almost ready, and I plan to bring her here tomorrow to learn from a teacher. Yes, you can do it at any time. We don't have semesters in our martial arts school, so we can learn as we go. The knowledge to be learned at the beginning is the same, only the proficiency is different. Or, you, a big brother, can come over and be a guest lecturer, do something for her. Zhang Lu looked at Tony playfully. I'm very busy. Tony subconsciously wanted to refuse. Then I'll arrange for a senior to give her personal counseling. No, Tony exploded immediately. If it comes to the understanding of Qigong, who can be more thorough than me? How can I let others misunderstand my children? Very well, then I will leave the task of teaching to you. Zhang Lu patted Tony on the shoulder and finalized the matter. Since Peter had a quarrel with him last time, he has never been to the martial arts hall. Zhang knew without guessing that the child had been hit too hard, and he couldn't recover for a while. But he wasn't worried at all, because Black Braised would not give up on this thug, and there would definitely be a way to solve Peter's psychological problems and then flick him. At that time, another dose of strong medicine can be given to Peter. For things in this world cannot be true, and the false cannot be true. Brainwashing will eventually become less and less effective with the growth of life experience. As long as Peter is not kept in a state of being brainwashed for a long time, let him walk around the world more, be beaten by reality a few more times, and if possible, read more books on philosophy, and his three views will naturally become more and more harmonious, mature. The power of Valkyrie lies in the heart. Valkyrie must deeply understand his own heart, know what he wants, what is important to him, and what price he is willing to bear in order to achieve this result. Therefore, many warriors are willing to destroy the world for a woman, and blow up the planet for a goal. This kind of behavior is not just a madman, but a thorough understanding of oneself, knowing the most important thing for oneself. What is it? This is enlightenment. Those who are not enlightened will not be able to go far on the road of martial arts. Awakening is not something you are born with, it needs to be achieved the day after tomorrow. Those who are good at thinking should torture their own hearts repeatedly, dig deep into the deepest thought hidden in the depths of their soul, maybe bright, maybe dark, maybe ulterior, and then reveal this most essential thought to the outside, as their own code of conduct. Those who are not good at thinking can only be beaten by the society, and their heads are smashed in front of the painful reality, over and over again, until they have experienced all the tragedies in life, either break out of the cocoon and become a butterfly, or bound in a cocoon, dying with all regrets. A teacher is also a person who preaches, accepts karma and solves doubts. Since he called me master, Peter would not be able to escape after several beatings. Professor Magneto led the X-Men to push back and failed to enter New York, but this does not mean that he gave up on it. That night, a disciple came to Zhang and handed over a letter arrogantly. Mr. Zahn, this is the gauntlet that Magneto asked me to write to you. On the 15th of next month, in the Sahara Desert, Magneto will personally teach you what is magnetic field control. Presumably as a warrior, you don't have the guts to go there, do you? Zhang glanced at him casually, and said, you should call me Master, Hansen. No, you are not qualified to be my master. I'm just here to investigate. By the way, my name is not Hansen. After speaking, Hansen's body was like a small building block reassembled, flipped from head to toe, quickly deformed, and turned into a naked woman with blue body, red hair and golden eyes. The mystique Ruiwen, whom Oralu, the Storm Girl, had been looking for so hard, appeared in front of Zhang on her own initiative. I don't care what your name is. Since you have bowed in front of the Patriarch and paid homage to the Master, you are my registered disciple. Are you going to deceive the Master and destroy the Ancestor? Zhang didn't read the letter at all. Shake it, and it will turn into powder. Perhaps, you don't know what happened to the last person who violated the door rules. But who gave you the courage to be so presumptuous in front of me? Zhang gaze turned cold, and Ruiwen immediately felt difficulty in breathing, as if her heartbeat was about to stop. Ruiwen found that Zhang gaze was actually colder and more ruthless than Magneto's. She couldn't help but regret that it was too rash to show up this time. She hurriedly explained, the person who apprenticed as a teacher is Hansen, and I came later. I just took advantage of his identity. There was no warmth in Zhang eyes, and he said coldly, that is to say, you killed my registered disciple and replaced him. No, he's not dead. I just pretended to be his boss behind the scenes and transferred him to another city to work. He's actually a member of a secret organization. This kind of secret organization often has one-line connections, so it's easy to fool him. Ruiwen hurriedly vomited out all the ins and outs. Then you learned martial arts without a teacher, because you stole the teacher. Zhang said lightly. I'm going to apprentice now, and make up for this link. Ruiwen hurriedly expressed her opinion. That's about the same. The coldness in Zhang eyes disappeared. Ruiwen fell to the ground, panting heavily. She had no doubt that if Zhang was not satisfied with her answer just now, she would definitely die here in the end. This guy seems to be more murderous than Eric, maybe Eric's decision is wrong. Zhang got up, brought Ruiwen to the main hall, made up the ceremony of apprenticeship again, and then explained the door rules again. In fact, Ruiwen already knew all of this, but now she has no courage to take any provocative actions. No one would have imagined that this usually gentle and amiable master would turn out to be so terrifying when fierce. After paying homage to the teacher, Zhonglu took Ruiwen back to the house and sat down, and said to her, "Since Magneto wants to seek death, then I will make him perfect, and let him experience the power of the magnetic field rotation." And no face calling himself Magneto. Ruiwen hesitated for a moment, and persuaded, "Master, in fact, I don't think you are a soft-hearted person. When you killed the policeman before, you didn't hesitate at all. In this case, why don't I make peace from the middle and let you have a good talk with Eric? Maybe you will have a common language." "Hee, what can I talk to him about?" Zhonglu smiled sarcastically, and said, "He was just a big kid who was hurt when he was young, and he had a psychological shadow when he grew up, and he never got out of his life. I probably know a little bit about his experience. He was used by government scientists for experiments when he was a child. Although he escaped later, he never got out of that shadow in his whole life. Look at the fraternity he is running now. The core philosophy is the supremacy of mutants, the survival of the fittest, and the survival of the fittest. How is this different from the one in the concentration camps back then? He just changed the supremacy of the Aryan race into the supremacy of mutants, thinks that the Jews are genetically inferior and should be eliminated. He believes that ordinary people are genetically inferior and that mutants are the future of the world. To put it bluntly, all his current thoughts were instilled in him by the scientists who used him as an experiment. It's ridiculous that after so many years, he still hasn't recovered from the brainwashing in his childhood and still regards this as a standard. A child who will never grow up, even if the force value is high, so what? He lacks the thinking mode of an adult, and he does not have a mature three views and knowledge system. He always uses a simple dichotomy in doing things, either one or the other. Of course, if he is strong enough, it's not wrong for to do so. When you conflict with the world, you can't change yourself, so you can change the world to adapt to yourself. But unfortunately, his strength it's too hip. Don't say that the world is invincible. Even if one person destroys the country, he can't do it. It's still Magneto. His name is Iron King. He can only control metals, and he doesn't understand the nature of magnetic fields. The government only needs to use some special plastic weapons to defeat him. As Zhonglu spoke, he stretched out his finger, and the plastic tray on the table next to it and the glass on it flew up to Ruiwen's hand. Ruiwen held the glass in one hand and the plastic tray in the other, looking at the things in her hands over and over again, dumbfounded. Ruiwen, Magneto is illiterate, and Professor X is a saint. Neither of these two people can be relied on. The future of mutants can only be supported by you. Zhonglu began to tease Mystique vigorously. The ability of Mystique can actually be very powerful, which is specifically reflected in the Sentinel robot. The Sentinel robot can switch any mutant's ability at any time, and its core lies in Mystique's X gene ability. So the question is, if Mystique reaches the state of magnetic field rotation, will her ability undergo a qualitative change to achieve the effect of the Sentinel robot? If it is as Zhonglu thinks, then Ruiwen's ability may in the future break through the limit of the ultimate infinite Qigong magnetic field turning 50 heavens. Even if she failed to break through the limit, it's not too bad to only reach the 50-fold heaven. Zhonglu's system task requires 10 local martial gods who have reached the 50th level of magnetic field rotation in exchange for a reward for comprehending the opportunity to break through the upper limit of Kung Fu. For a long time, Ruiwen has been a small follower of Magneto and Professor X. Her abilities are only suitable for infiltrators, and her combat ability is no different from that of ordinary people. Now she is suddenly expected to be the future of mutants. This change was so sudden that she didn't know how to deal with it for a while. She faltered, not knowing what to say. Ruiwen, Magneto and Professor X have been working for so many years, but they still haven't been able to change the situation of mutants. This has already explained the problem. The paths of both of them are wrong. You must find a third way for mutants come on, that is the road of the martial god. Zhonglu continued to fool around. Mutants are very talented, and they have innate advantages in practicing the ultimate infinite Qigong. Mutants' innate abilities are stronger, but they are more likely to be restrained. On the road of the martial god, there is no weakness. You saw Tony and Peter before. After they got started, they were no longer afraid of the harm of ordinary guns, and this is something that many mutants can't do in their lifetime. If the realm of magnetic field rotation is achieved, everyone will be Magneto, so why worry about the wanted and hunted down by the human government? You can establish your own country. And even if the mutants can't get started successfully, these Qigong exercises can still enhance their physical fitness, allowing them to face the threat of hot weapons and have more resistance. Besides, this will also have a significant impact on their own ability control help. From any point of view, it is the best choice for mutants to practice ultimate infinite Qigong and walk the road of Valkyrie. Ruiwen is actually a very simple person. When she was very young, she was taken by Professor and Magneto, taking care of her like a little sister. But Ruiwen rarely has any friends because of her image. No friends means no social circle and no life experience. Later, the reason why Ruiwen and Magneto left was that Magneto was a racist, and the people around him were all mutants, and there were all kinds of crooked people. Since everyone looks weird, naturally no one will continue to laugh at her appearance. It was also after that she had more friends. But this much is relative, and her circle is still very narrow. Moreover, the mutants are basically people on the fringes of society, and they are all ostracized, otherwise they would not mix with Magneto. In this case, her growth is actually very limited. If Magneto or Professor X were here, whether it was because of his stubborn thinking or because of his erudition, it would definitely not be so easy to believe Zanlu's words. But Ruiwen couldn't find anything wrong with these words at all. Zanlu said that the more she felt, the master was right. The more she listened, the more she felt that she should be the future hope of the mutants, and had the responsibility to lead everyone on a new road of Valkyrie. If she called Zanlu master before, it was purely because she didn't want to die and was an expedient measure. Now she is convinced of this master and sincerely treats him as her life mentor. Zanlu is different from Magneto. Don't worry about doing things with Magneto, just do things according to Magneto's orders. Steal this information today, and steal that information tomorrow. But after working for so many years, the mutant is still the same bird, still unchanged, and she is a little tired. Zanlu and Professor X are also different. Professor X pays more attention to the shaping of moral values, and he must explain everything clearly, why he should do this, and why he cannot do it. What is good and what is bad. What Professor X said was very reasonable, and Raven had to admit that he was right. But the truth that is obviously true is completely out of touch with what happens in the real world. No matter how many good deeds mutants have done, they are still rejected by humans. Zanlu is a different master. He won't tell her any great principles, and he won't care about her own moral values, etc. He will directly lay out what kind of path she should take in the future, and tell her how to take this path, how easy it is, how many benefits there are after going through it. Even if it fails, there is absolutely no loss. He doesn't care whether you walk according to his ideas, the road is there, you can walk if you want to, and forget it if you don't want to. According to what he said, that is, the opportunity is in front of you, whether you grasp it or not is your personal matter, and has nothing to do with him. In particular, she has received unprecedented attention and respect from Master Zanlu. When she was with Professor X and Magneto in the past, although they cared about her very much, they actually only treated her as a little sister. Love her, protect her, never let her be in danger. This moved her very much, but also very embarrassing. She was fine when she was young, but when she grew up, no matter how old she was, in the minds of the two of them, she was still the little sister who needed their care. But what Ruiwen needs is recognition, respect, and equal dialogue and communication. Even if her attitude is a bit off, like she was almost killed by Zanlu today, she can accept it. Reading www.uakanshu.com. As an eternal supporting role, suddenly being promoted to the position of the protagonist, being needed, valued, and regarded as the future hope of mutants, this alone is enough for Ruiwen to make choices and choices in her heart. Master, I will go back and persuade Eric to give up his original idea, and then lead everyone to take the road of Valkyrie. Ruiwen said excitedly. Zanlu shook his head in disappointment and sighed. Ruiwen, as I said, Magneto is just a child who hasn't grown up. His ideas come from the wrong ideas instilled in his childhood. He can no longer lead the mutants forward. You must take responsibility. In addition, form an organization independent of the Brotherhood of Mutants. Only in this way can you control the future development direction of the mutants and let them go further on the road of Valkyrie. Another organization. This was completely beyond Ruiwen's imagination. It seems unnecessary, right? I will persuade Eric. As long as it is for the benefit of the mutants, he will definitely be willing to accept it. Standing and shrugging, said, "That's up to you. I'm just offering a suggestion for you to consider. But I hope you remember that a person who leads the future of the ethnic group must not be someone else's subordinate and follower. Ruiwen, you have the ability to independently lead mutants to glory, don't waste your talent. Also, don't cancel the date of the martial arts competition. I'll teach Magneto a lesson, maybe it can help him recognize himself. A mutant who can manipulate the magnetic field innately, if he cultivates the magnetic field to rotate, what will he look like?" Zhonglu was very curious about this. Ruiwen left with her mission, silently, no one knew she had been here, not even Orlo, the storm girl who was always trying to find Ruiwen, didn't know that Ruiwen had left. Zhonglu didn't care at all whether she could convince Magneto, or whether she really broke away from the Brotherhood of Mutants and set up a new organization by herself. It's just laid out casually, it doesn't matter the result. Marvel's worldview is too huge, there are too many protagonists and supporting roles in it, and he doesn't bother to search for it. If he encounters it, he will try to teach it. If he doesn't encounter it, he will be fine. The rotation of the magnetic field is a kind of cancer, and it is contagious, not only to humans but also to the planet. Even if he doesn't urge him, more and more magnetic field madmen will appear. The Earth is full of disasters, how many explosions can it withstand? Control your breathing. Concentrate. Start rubbing from the abdominal cells closest to the dantian. Tony walked back and forth in the martial arts hall, paying attention to everyone's breathing rate, giving pointers and adjustments at any time. And Zhonglu sat in the main hall, watching Tony give a lecture with a smile. Tony's progress is leaps and bounds, basically cheating with high technology, and he is definitely not as good as Peter in terms of understanding the subtleties of exercises. Zhonglu asked Tony to teach. In fact, it was also an opportunity for him to sort out his own martial arts foundation, so as not to have a weak foundation and affect subsequent development. Although Tony didn't want to waste time, practicing with Pepper was also a lot of fun, so he persisted. Suddenly, a certain disciple's breathing became short of breath, his whole body trembled, and his body went dark and bright. Tony had no experience with this, so he thought he was about to make a breakthrough. But Zhonglu, who was sitting in the hall, turned black, knowing what was going on. This scene is so familiar. Sure enough, after a while, the figure of this person suddenly became very tall. He was 2.5 meters tall, with muscles all over his body, but a rhinoceros horn grew out of that face. It was only 3 months since Jimmy Yang became a mutant last time. Another disciple activated the X gene under the noses of everyone in the martial arts gym and became a mutant. The audience was in an uproar. Others were better, but the mutants at the scene became excited. This is the first time they have seen the same kind appear up close. On the other hand, Orlo held his breath nervously, ready to suppress the out-of-control new mutant companion at any time. However, to her surprise, after a few deep breaths, the mutant's eyes regained clarity, without any sign of losing control. Professor X's guess is correct. The ultimate infinite Qigong does activate the X gene in ordinary people. Not only that, but also allows the awakened mutants to quickly control their own power and not lose control. She can't wait to share this good news with her fellow X-Men. But what made her feel sad immediately was that the new mutant looked down at her hands and feet in surprise, then took out her mobile phone, and after seeing her own appearance, she began to howl uncontrollably. No. How could this be? Apparently, instead of being happy, being a mutant made the man sad and disappointed and crying. Orlo hurried forward to comfort him. Adams, this is the mutant gene activated in your body. I am Storm from the X-Men, and all of us are mutants. After the assessment period is over, you are welcome to join our X-Men. With tears in his eyes, Adams looked up at Orlo, and asked in an expectant voice, "Can I still be cured?" Orlo froze, and explained helplessly, "Everyone has mutant genes in their bodies. This is not a disease, so there is no cure or cure." That is to say, I can only be like this for the rest of my life. Adams said in despair. The situation is not as bad as you thought. You must have discovered that your current physical fitness is far superior to that of ordinary people. You will be a powerful fighter in the future. But that's the only way I can live forever, isn't it? Adams interrupted Orlo. My lover will leave me, and I will be alone forever. No, that's not the case. There are many mutants who are married and have children, and their lives are very happy. That's even worse, my kid will have a rhino horn on his face too, right? Ah, this. I can't rule out this possibility, but there is also a great possibility that your child's mutant gene has another ability, and the probability of this is higher. Actually, you should be glad that you are a rhinoceros man, not an elephant man. Tony tried to make a joke when he saw that the atmosphere at the scene was rather dignified. What's the difference? Adams asked over his shoulder. The elephant man's is on his face, but the rhino man's is not. Tony just finished speaking, when Pepper next to him stepped on his foot hard. Fortunately, she was wearing flat shoes when practicing martial arts, otherwise it would have been twisted knot to her feet. Sorry, Adams, Tony is just being mean, he didn't mean any harm. Pepper once again wiped the Tony, the unreliable boss, and apologized seriously to Adams. I just livened things up. Well, I'll stop talking. Facing the angry gazes of Pepper and Orlo, Tony shrugged and shut up obediently. Forget it, I know what people think of mutants. I used to be one of them. Adams was heartbroken now, and he didn't care about Tony's little offense at all. And ironically, Adams was also an elite sent by the military. Then, I don't know how the military coordinates internally. Anyway, in the end, the elite fighter voluntarily quit the martial arts gym and never came back. I don't know if it was hidden by the snow, or, actively, cooperated to do the experiment. From the beginning to the end, this disciple did not seek help from Zhang Lu, nor did he respond to the olive branch that Professor X handed over. He still deeply trusted the government and army behind him. That being the case, Zhang Lu did not interfere in his affairs, neither did Professor X. We are all grown-ups, and we have to walk the path we choose on our own knees. But even so, the fact that Ultimate Wuliang Qigong can activate the X gene in the human body still surprised many behind-the-scenes forces. Zhang Lu himself didn't take this episode seriously. After all, he was just a group of registered disciples raised by his stepmother, and it wasn't worth Zhang Lu's big fight for it. But there are always some people who are self-righteous and do some stupid things. The weather is getting colder, and people on the street have thickened their clothes, but here in the martial arts hall, there are still a group of out-of-season creatures. Not only Zhang Lu and a few official disciples didn't care, but even ordinary registered disciples, after this period of training, have strengthened their physique to the limit of ordinary people, and this temperature has no effect on warriors. Tony didn't persist for a few days, and ran away again, leaving the job to the new third junior sister Sharon Carter, who called it, training newcomers. Anyway, Sharon is a woman, and she is not worried that Pepper will be taken advantage of by her. Sharon is very keen on doing these things. In addition to carefully studying and adapting to the realm of electric current promotion every day, and starting to prepare for the future into the realm of magnetic field rotation, she actively gives instructions to each disciple, and her sense of responsibility is higher than Tony does not know how many times. With Sharon in charge of these details, Zhang Lu can settle down, cultivate with heart, and improve his complete realm. On this day, when he was practicing, Sharon brought a man with glasses in a suit and leather shoes over. Master, this is your guest. Zhang Lu stopped and took a look. This man looked like a successful person, wearing a handmade suit, with confidence and pride all over his body. He waved his hand and asked Sharon to continue leading the training of the younger brothers and sisters. After Sharon went out, this guy, standing in front of Zhang Lu, started to introduce himself with a warm smile on his face. Exhibition owner, hello, I am Lindemann, a consultant to the Pentagon, and I am here on behalf of the Pentagon. Since the name of the martial arts school was made public, all the visiting guests have consciously learned Chinese by themselves, or choose those who can speak Chinese as envoys. Zhang Lu nodded, did not speak, and did not ask this Lindemann to sit down. Lindemann continued to smile without changing his expression. the generals in the Pentagon are very interested in the ultimate immeasurable qigong of the owner of the exhibition hall. They think it is a treasure of mankind and the key to open the door of human evolution. It is. Thanks to Lindemann's good eloquence, he continued to praise for more than 10 minutes without repeating the same thing. When his mouth was almost worn out and his throat was dry, he stopped, and then he heard Zhang Lu's casual reply. Character. Well, Lindemann's face froze, and then he restored the smile just now, as if he wasn't the one who received the cold reception. The owner of the exhibition hall, the generals of the Pentagon, is planning to promote a proposal to include Ultimate Wuliang Qigong as a compulsory subject for the military, replacing the original free fighting course. At that time, the Ultimate Wuliang Qigong will be famous all over the world, and the world will be famous. The Ultimate Wuliang Gym will also become the largest martial arts gym in the world, and the Ultimate Wuliang School will be the world's #1 martial arts school. And you, the owner of the exhibition hall, are the head coaches of all the U.S. military, and you have become one of the most powerful figures in the United States, and even the world. When the time comes. Lindemann gave it with eloquence, and talked about these benefits in a dazzling manner, so that his own eyes lit up and he was very excited. Oh, after he finished speaking, Zhang Lu's one-word reply dispelled all his passion. Quote, Regarding what I just said, does the owner of the exhibition hall have anything to say? He asked tentatively. First, Zhang Lu raised a finger and said, anyone who wants to practice ultimate infinite qigong must become a disciple of this school. All disciples who join this school have 3 tests. The first test is to know Chinese. The second test is to reach the state of electric current promotion within 3 months. The third test is to reach the state of magnetic field rotation. Entering the first test as a registered disciple, entering the second test as a formal disciple, and entering the third test as a true disciple. Secondly, Zhang Lu raised his second finger and said, if there is someone who steals the teacher, he can make up the apprenticeship formalities after passing any of the 3 tests, but the person who leaks the exercises to the teacher who steals the teacher will be severely punished by the school. Finally, Zhang Lu raised his third finger and said, the sect's rules are strict and must not be violated. The sect's rules are above any rules in the world. Anyone who dares to violate them will be severely punished. Every time he said one rule, Lindemann's face turned ugly, and when he finished the 3 rules, Lindemann's face turned blue. Exhibition owner, it is impossible for you to realize these conditions. No one asks them to come here to learn from a teacher, but since they are here, they have to abide by my rules. Zhang Lu still looked indifferent. Tolerance is great, but without desire is strength. The rule is such a rule, whether you like it or not. If you don't come, no one begs you to come, but if you come, you dare to be unruly, that May from last time. Hey, it seems that after time has turned back, that May has come back to life again. Previously, Zhang Liu was busy consolidating the realm of the 25 heavens with the magnetic field rotating, and improving his own complete realm through the insights gained through the broken earth, time reversal, and space eyes, completely forgetting about Melinda May. Up. Big and small things, who still remembers them? It wasn't until this moment that he suddenly remembered that big disciple, who had violated the sect's rules back then. But he didn't bother to make a special trip to trouble her again. Under his personal demonstration and coercion, he couldn't even step into the magnetic field rotation realm, so there was no need to waste time. Lindemann's face was very ugly. When he thought about it, the Pentagon offered such a good condition, and would be a fool to refuse. Only after Zhang Lu's heartbeat can he discuss the conditions behind him. But now that Zhang Lu has such an attitude, there is no way for him to raise the conditions behind. Mr. Zhang, your way of negotiating like a lion is not a wise choice. Lindemann said with a sullen face. TCH, who is negotiating with you? Here are my rules, you either follow it or leave, there is no room for negotiation. Zhang Lu said disdainfully. Mr. Zhang, you don't want to toast or eat fine wine. The Pentagon has released enough goodwill. You just need to drive out those mutants and promise not to continue teaching mutants. The conditions just now are your best rewards. But if you are shameless, you may not be able to bear the consequences afterwards. Lindemann said threateningly. If you want to court death, just let your horse come here. Now that the talks between the 2 parties had collapsed, Zhang Lu didn't bother to continue talking nonsense with him. With a wave of his hand, Lindemann also enjoyed Tony's daily treatment and was thrown out of the yard. However, Tony is now strong and able to land on the ground smoothly, but Lindemann has no such ability. His face is covered in blood, and one of his front teeth fell out. "You'll regret it. Crazy," Lindemann said angrily at the door, and then drove away in despair. The conversation between the two didn't lower their voices, and Zhonglu didn't deliberately block it, and the warriors in the courtyard are now hearing and seeing, so they naturally listen to their conversation. Especially Sharon Carter and Orlo, their brows were furrowed after hearing this. That night, the two reported the situation to their immediate superiors respectively. The cold weather still cannot stop the youthful enthusiasm of the students, and the campus is still full of hormones. Peter sighed again and threw the locker full of love letters into the trash can to make room for his backpack. "Wow, Peter, don't you even take a look at it. Wouldn't it be very sad if those little girls found out?" Fat Ned looked at the pile of things that had been thrown into the trash can with envious eyes. "Love letter, I wish I could write it all to myself. They like Thor, it has nothing to do with me," Peter said with a cold expression. "You or Thor?" Ned couldn't understand. "Before I became Thor, they refused to look at me. After I became Thor, they suddenly became interested in me, and they wrote love letters one after another. They didn't like me at all, but Thor. It's just a title." Peter put away his things and walked into the classroom with his textbooks. "You were wrong, Peter. Before you had nothing to attract them. You were just a nerd. Why should they like you? But after becoming Thor, your charm has greatly increased, and it is normal to attract them," Ned said in front of Peter, walking backwards, trying to enlighten Peter. "That is, if I am no longer Thor, they will ignore me." "Ah, it's not a good way to say it, but it's true. You can't make girls like a guy who is worthless." "Have I ever been that bad?" Peter asked, frowning. "Well, it's not too bad. It's just that you lack self-confidence, and you don't have any bright spots except for your grades. You are not physically fit, your sports are not good, and you always like to stay at home and don't often participate in school activities." Quote. Peter was speechless for a while. Of course, most ordinary people are like this. But you are different now. After you practice martial arts, you have become a muscular man. Even if you don't have superpowers, this muscle alone can make a lot of girls scream. The most important thing, what's more, you are very confident now. Confident men are the most attractive. Ned pinched the muscle on Peter's arm enviously. "Peter, you are no longer an ordinary person, it's normal for girls to like you." "No, I'm just an ordinary person." Peter is now very sensitive to saying that he is not an ordinary person, a little panicked, and a little at a loss. He is very afraid now, becoming the kind of person his master said. Pushing Ned away, Peter walked forward sullenly. "Hey, Peter, it feels like you've been depressed these days, and you and Gwen haven't even spoken to each other. Did you quarrel?" Ned asked gossipingly. Peter didn't speak, and walked forward with his head buried. When he arrived in the classroom, he listened absently to the teacher's lecture on the stage. Then he inadvertently discovered that even if he was absent-minded, he could still remember everything the teacher said, and even draw inferences from one instance to digest it easily. "Peter, admit it, when you embark on the road of martial arts, you will eventually be insulated from the word, ordinary person, and gradually drift away." Master Zhonglu's voice rang in Peter's ear again, making his face even more serious. His hair turned pale. Peter was full of random thoughts, and finally made it to the end of get out of class. The teacher came to Peter and said to him, "Peter, the principal invites you to his office." After thanking the teacher, Peter came to the principal's office with a heavy heart, knocked on the door and entered. "Principal Coulson, are you looking for me?" Coulson cordially asked Peter to sit down and poured him tea himself. "Peter, Sharon successfully entered the sect 2 days ago, and now she has become an official disciple of the Ultimate Infinite sect. From now on, she will be your third junior sister." Peter was taken aback. He was like an ostrich these days, shrunk himself at home, never went to the martial arts gym, and didn't care about the affairs of the martial arts gym. He really didn't know the news. "Is that so? Congratulations." He forced a smile. Coulson pretended not to see his expression, but still thanked him enthusiastically, and in his words, he had great hopes for Sharon Carter to be able to get started and develop superpowers. Peter frowned more and more, and finally couldn't help interrupting him, asking, Principal, do you think Sharon is still an ordinary person after she develops superpowers? Will she still abide by the laws of ordinary people? Coulson looked at Peter in surprise, and asked suspiciously, Of course, why do you have such doubts? She is so advanced in martial arts now that even guns can't do anything to her. There is no need for her to act in accordance with the law. If she violates the law, who will punish her? Oh, so you are worried about this, so there is no need. Coulson said with a smile, This world needs checks and balances. Where there is light, there will be darkness. Where there are super criminals, there will be superheroes. If Sharon becomes a superhero, a criminal, naturally there are other superheroes to punish her, such as Thor. Peter was stunned, but he didn't expect the topic to be brought up to him. Should I punish Sharon? That's right, Coulson smiled. Aren't you willing to contribute to the peace of this world? That's not true. However, in the family rules, it is clearly stipulated that it is forbidden to kill each other. Moreover, I have no law enforcement power. If I go to stop Sharon, it is also an illegal act, right? The rules of the house can't be greater than the laws of the Federation, right? Coulson said firmly. In other words, Nick didn't hear Coulson's words, you reading www. Otherwise, uakhonshu.com would have to come up and beat him hard. As for the issue of law enforcement power, wouldn't it be good to join a law enforcement department? As long as you have the authorization of the law enforcement department, all your actions are legal. Peter suddenly realized, and remembered the shield, which has never had a sense of existence. Maybe he should contact S.H.I.E.L.D. more. Coulson smiled and continued. Of course, in fact, the most important thing that restricts the behavior of superheroes is the superhero's own moral sense. Superheroes are superpowers who are self-disciplined, and superpowers who cannot discipline themselves will degenerate into superheroes sooner or later. Criminal. Superpower itself does not matter good or evil. It is like a gun. Some people hold guns to protect others, while others hold guns to rob and kill. The fundamental reason lies in this person's morality. Good people will not kill others. Just like you, Peter, I very much believe that a good boy like you will not degenerate into a super criminal. Of course, even if you degenerate, there will be other superheroes to sanction you, for example, your master Zhang Lu. Coulson stared at Peter fiercely. Hearing Coulson mention his master, Peter frowned slightly, and asked hesitantly, Then what if my master becomes a super criminal? Coulson frowned, pondered for a long time, and then sighed. Then there may be no way, because there is no one who can sanction him at this stage. Maybe the combination of Tony, you, and Sharon can play a certain role in checking and balancing him. With checks and balances, maybe you will be more self-disciplined and not degenerate into a super criminal. Balance. Peter thoughtfully played with the teacup in his hand, and was speechless for a long time. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.